The story begins with Ariake being expelled from the group by his companions, who call him useless. He reacts calmly, questioning the decision, and sitting under a tree, ironically comments that his apprentices are finally leaving the nest. Mihama Ariake, and one 8-year-old adventurer in the kingdom of Granum, explains that he was forced to join the group. The leader reminds him that he is being expelled from the named hero's party, but Ariake, unconcerned, says he will gladly leave. The group includes Harunoa Vivia, recognized as the greatest hero and bearer of the paladin skill, being the kingdom's greatest hope against the Demon King. There is also Elga, known as the Shield of the Kingdom, with great magical and physical resistance, and Delia, a fighter who combines physical strength with magic, possessing the unbeatable fist skill. They make it clear that Ariake was only in the group because they came from the same village. The group also has Pulala, a powerful mage capable of facing Demon King armies, possessing the Archmage skill. While she and the others belittle Ariake, he remains calm and says the time has finally come. Among them is Alicia, the Great Saint, a legend in a world where healing magic has almost disappeared, mastering even the ability to revive. Her beauty and reputation are known far beyond the kingdom's borders. Alicia shows coldness in the situation, which leads Ariake to realize she truly dislikes him. Without understanding why, he imagines something must have happened over the time they've known each other to cause such resentment. Ariake remembers that when they were younger, Alicia followed him everywhere but never spoke to him. They grew up together in the same village and were always friends, which motivated him to keep traveling with the group. However, he wonders why now everyone seems to hate him. Ariake asks why he is being expelled, and hears that it is because he has no unique skill, knowing only support techniques anyone could learn. The group accuses him of being useless in combat, weak, and only getting in the way during battles. Ariake accepts the accusation of having no special skills, but before leaving tries to give the group some advice. Alicia, with a firm stance, states that he contributes nothing to the team, reinforcing his expulsion. The leader of the group, laughing and backed by the others, emphasizes that even the Great Saint wants Ariake gone, calling him a nuisance. Ariake accepts to leave, but before doing so, decides to say something surprising the leader with his calm attitude. Before departing, Ariake hands the leader a vial, warning not to confuse it, revealing it is athlete's foot medicine. Irritated and embarrassed, the leader swears he won't forget the insult. Ariake then leaves alone, remembering that he joined the group by divine request to support his childhood friends until the right moment. After leaving the group, Ariake decides to head to the city of Alti, but even after walking for a long time, he realizes he still hasn't found the forest exit. Ariake thinks about settling in the peaceful city of Alti, a welcoming place he has visited before. Now, free of obligations, he considers living a quiet life there, but knows the journey will take over a month, and managing everything alone will be harder. As he walks, Ariake wonders if the group will be able to manage on their own, remembering they were disorganized and paid little attention to basic details like reading maps. He recalls always guiding them on preparation and item management, but believes they should at least handle the basics. Soon, he spots the forest's exit. Upon leaving the forest, Ariake admires the scenery and decides it's not worth worrying about the old group anymore. He thinks traveling alone might not be so bad after all. Ariake remembers a childhood dream where a divine figure ordered him to protect and support his friends until the right time. Despite not wanting to, he ended up following that order, but now realizes they abused his goodwill, and ironically thinks that without him, they probably won't live long. Ariake reflects that, despite everything, he can't complain if he managed to save his former companions' lives. He remembers the skill he received from God, called Backup, a hidden power that works behind the scenes, capable of enhancing equipment, increasing speed, accelerating recovery, and guiding allies in dungeons. Ariake explains that his skill, when analyzed, only shows an extensive list of common techniques, making him seem average to others. He uses another ability to hide his high-level powers, keeping his true strength secret. Despite being extremely powerful, no one realizes its real value. Ariake reflects that he didn't really expect to be expelled, and didn't even get to explain his unique skill. Even though he was hated, he always cared for the group like a guardian, and concludes that maybe he was too protective, imagining they're just going through a rebellious phase. Ariake decides he needs to let them go to walk on their own, and feels proud to see they can move forward with their own strength, trusting in the companions they still have. However, suddenly he begins to hear a mysterious call for help. Ariake hears a voice breaking through his magic barrier, begging for help. Surprised, he wonders who could be strong enough to bypass his defense, even considering it might be a human. and decides to respond to the mysterious call. The mysterious voice claims to be under an unremovable curse and asks to be killed. Ariake promptly refuses, questioning the sudden request and saying the person will have to find someone else to fulfill that wish. Ariake is surprised to realize the voice belongs to a member of the proud dragon folk, something unlikely to beg a human. Suspicious, he considers ending the communication, but the pained tone in the voice makes him hesitate, questioning how he could help a stranger asking to have their life ended. Ariake thinks that if the request were to save them instead of killing them, it would be different. At that moment, the voice changes and begs him to save them, making him reconsider the situation. Ariake smiles and decides to accept the request for help, realizing the voice might really be from a dragonfolk member. Ariake moves through the forest, protecting his body to avoid injury, but ends up dirtying and tearing his clothes. Admitting he's not the most active type, he keeps going until he comes across a creature that surprises him. Faced with the threat, Ariake decides to use his special ability against insects, activating a powerful spell that releases energy around him to deal with the danger. Ariake reflects on the pride of the dragonfolk, who only submit to humans if they are defeated, and so he finds it strange that they would ask for help. He considers that, this time, there might be someone behind the situation, manipulating events. Ariake finds a barrier weakened by tremors and wonders if the voice really came from there. As he approaches the entrance, he notices signs of a massacre, with many dead around the place. Ariake analyzes the site, imagining that the dead might be bandits who couldn't pass through the barrier. He considers forcing entry but fears harming the wildlife. Determined to resolve it quickly, he is interrupted by a man appearing behind him, asking why the rush. The man reveals he controls zombies using a necromancer's jewel, explaining he stole it to ensure his survival. Ariake recognizes the artifact's power and notes that with undead at his disposal, he doesn't need to resort to petty theft. Ariake provokes the man, calling him an insignificant criminal. Irritated, the necromancer orders his zombies to attack and threatens to turn Ariake into one as well. The necromancer laughs, confident that Ariake can do nothing against his zombie horde. However, Ariake remains calm, activates his magic, and after asking if the enemy is done talking, orders him to disappear. Ariake uses his Restore ability, releasing a powerful light that purifies and disintegrates all the zombies, completely neutralizing the necromancer's threat. The necromancer is shocked to see his zombies destroyed and asks who Ariake really is. With a confident smile, he replies that he was expelled from the heroes group for being considered dead weight. The necromancer can't believe someone considered dead weight could use such powerful magic. Ariake explains it wasn't attack magic, but rather the Restore ability, which returns everything to its original state, reducing the zombies back to dust. The necromancer, frightened, says he's never heard of such an ability but is soon attacked by his own zombies. Ariake watches coldly, saying that's the deserved fate for greedily using the necromancer's jewel, reminding that even undead turn against their master when they're hungry. Ariake faces the defeated necromancer and scolds him for trying to act like a god, questioning what he thought would happen. With no patience to prolong the situation, he decides to end it quickly. Ariake wonders how to cross the barrier ahead, suspecting there is a dungeon on the other side. Determined to proceed, he begins planning the best way to get through it. Ariake activates the metamorphosis skill, which allows him to change his physical form. His body glows and transforms into the appearance of a cute round creature. Transformed into the small creature, Ariake praises his new form and begins digging under the barrier. He manages to pass through the soil and come out the other side, satisfied that the plan worked and that he's now inside. Ariake returns to his normal form and realizes that the barrier didn't extend underground, allowing him to pass. He comments that the creator of the defense probably didn't foresee someone transforming into an animal and digging under such a heavy door. He then prepares to move forward. Upon entering, Ariake notices that the place is immense and begins to suspect that the barrier is distorting the internal space. He concludes that it's a high-level dungeon. The narrator explains that adventurers are ranked from E to S according to their abilities and the monsters they defeat. Few reach S rank, like Alicia, the Great Saint, and the heroine Vivia. Most are rank B or lower, while rank A adventurers help fight the Demon King. Ariake reveals that he is rank C, considering himself extremely average. As he walks through the place, Ariake thinks that the adventurer ranking system is flawed, as it values combat strength too much and makes it impossible to reach higher ranks in support roles. He reflects that he doesn't care much, but that he would fix it if he could. Suddenly, he notices something and spots gargoyle statues ahead. Ariake recognizes the artifact in front of him and says he knows what it is. Soon after, a voice echoes announcing the presence of an intruder, causing the gargoyle statues to begin glowing. The gargoyles come to life, asking if he intends to free the Red Calamity. Ariake is intrigued, wondering if this entity was the one who called him there, and concludes that since there are guardians, the place must indeed be important. The gargoyles rush at Ariake, declaring they will exterminate him. He assesses their speed and level, estimating that they could destroy an entire kingdom if given the chance. The gargoyles attack, but Ariake uses the spatial bending skill, creating a barrier in the air that prevents the blows from reaching him, leaving the enemies frustrated. One of the gargoyles manages to break through Ariake's barrier, charging forward and forcing him to slide aside to avoid the impact. Surprised, he admits that the strike was impressive. Ariake blocks a series of rapid attacks from the gargoyles but begins to feel the pressure of the battle. One of them praises his strength for a human, while another takes advantage of an opening to hit him with a powerful blow. The gargoyles are startled to see Ariake vanish before their eyes. In an instant, he reappears behind one of them, mocking them for falling for his trick before launching a surprise attack. With a swift motion, Ariake decapitates one of the gargoyles before it can react. The other, shocked by the scene, questions how someone could defeat them so easily, but is struck soon after as well. Ariake taunts the last guardian, saying that even if it's unlikely, this is reality, and being low-ranked doesn't make him inferior. He demands that the door be opened, calling the enemy a wooden puppet. Annoyed, the guardian charges furiously, shouting for the human not to get cocky. The guardian rushes at Ariake but is stopped by a wall of air created by the hero. Then, Ariake reveals that he had used a disguise to fool the enemy, leaving him confused and vulnerable. The protagonist explains that nothing he did was special. He used a skill that reflects attacks and provoked the enemy into making a mistake, making it clear that, from the start, he already had complete control over the situation. After defeating his enemies, the protagonist proceeds through the place. He approaches an imposing door, orders it to open, and slowly, the gate begins to creak as it moves. The protagonist steps through the gate and walks along a wide corridor, noting the impressive size of the place. He confirms that he is indeed in a dungeon and reflects that they operate as if they were living beings. While exploring, the protagonist finds a chest in the corridor and approaches it. He reflects that dungeons lure intruders inside with bait like these chests, but most are traps. Monsters are sent to attack invaders, and the blood and magic of these victims strengthen the creatures, creating a cycle that makes the dungeon increasingly powerful, like a monster drawing prey into its mouth. The protagonist remarks that it had been a long time since he last looted anything. Upon opening the chest, a monster leaps at him, but is quickly neutralized. Moving on, he enters a massive hall and observes the sheer scale of the place. The protagonist understands why the hall is so large, to provide space for battle. Before him appears a huge stone enemy, identified as the Great Golem. The protagonist analyzes the Great Golem, estimating it to be around level 80, and that at least a rank A adventurer would be needed to defeat it. Despite its size, he notices the enemy is fast and decides not to face it head-on, while the golem attacks with crushing force. The protagonist is surprised to find not just one, but 3 great golems, remarking that this would require a rank S adventurer to take on. The creatures advance, making the ground shake with their imposing presence. The protagonist dodges a crushing blow from one of the golems, stating that to him, rankings mean nothing. With confidence, he taunts his opponent, making it clear he is in control of the situation. In a moment from the past, a rank S adventurer and his companion mock the protagonist, calling him weak for being only rank C. They claim that even rank A adventurers are on another level, and that he would probably faint if he saw an enemy like a great golem. Laughing, they belittle his abilities, certain he wouldn't stand a chance against real challenges. The protagonist analyzes that the tremors caused by a golem would be enough to paralyze someone in place. Then, he leaps nimbly across the battlefield, dodging enemies and using the golem's own bodies for support. With quick, precise movements, he begins counting his actions, preparing for the next step of his attack. The protagonist acknowledges that the tremors actually worked in his favor, helping him execute the plan. He takes the moment to land precisely, completing the 3rd mark needed on the golem's bodies. Meanwhile, his ally watches and confirms that all 3 enemies have been marked, indicating that preparations for the final blow are complete. With a firm command for them to vanish, the protagonist's ally unleashes a devastating attack. The explosion of energy completely destroys the great golems, scattering debris throughout the hall and making it clear the battle is over. The protagonist reflects that, even as just rank C, he managed to defeat the golems, confirming his suspicion that the ranking system is flawed. Moving forward, he finds a door decorated with skulls and wonders if the red calamity that asked for his death is behind it. The protagonist slowly opens the skull-adorned door and steps inside. After taking a few steps, the sound of applause echoes through the room, drawing his attention to someone ahead. Inside the room, a man with an imposing appearance and elaborate clothes applauds the protagonist, praising his skill and saying no one had come this far in over 1,000 years. With a curious tone, he asks for the protagonist's name, who coldly replies by asking who he is. The man begins speaking animatedly, deducing that the protagonist was sent to contact someone outside, and commenting that the barrier must have weakened after so many years. He tries to introduce himself as a high priest, but the protagonist, impatient, interrupts, saying he doesn't care and only wants to find the one he came to save. The priest praises his resilience for coming so far, but claims the dungeon isn't over yet. Meanwhile, the protagonist cleans his ear, showing complete disinterest. The priest is shocked to hear the protagonist arrived without suffering any damage and asks about the golems in the last room. The protagonist responds that they were strong and fast, but it would be troublesome to handle them normally, so he decided to take them down all at once. He explains that their strength didn't matter because he didn't use direct attacks, leaving the priest incredulous at how easily he won. The protagonist explains that he used magical amplification to defeat the golems. He reveals that, despite their strength, these creatures are delicate creations with magical nervous systems that require extreme precision to control mana flow. If they receive external magic, the system overloads and explodes. The priest agrees but tries to downplay it, saying it would be simple for an experienced mage like him. The priest is shocked, saying it's impossible to defeat a golem with little magic, as even gathering all the mages in the kingdom wouldn't be enough. He is even more stunned to learn the protagonist defeated 3. The protagonist confidently replies, "That's exactly why he's here without a scratch." The priest begins laughing oddly, stating that he won't be fooled so easily. Even acknowledging that the protagonist seems strong, he declares that he will sacrifice him to attain godhood. When asked if he truly seeks to become a god, he confirms enthusiastically, saying he will become an immortal god and rule over everything. The protagonist, impatient, asks directly about the one who called him, while the priest begins speaking about the evil god Arkamtar. Ignored, he becomes irritated, but the priest continues explaining that to become a god, he needs a magical reservoir. He then reveals a glowing crystal, saying it's the key to the ritual and that he will show it as a reward for having come so far. From within the crystal emerges a young girl with horns and draconic features, emanating an intense presence. The priest reveals excitedly that she is the daughter of the dragon Gespent, while the aura around her grows, accompanied by a powerful roar. The protagonist looks in surprise at the draconic girl before him. In disbelief, he remarks that he can't believe he's seeing a daughter of the dragon Gespent. The man laughs arrogantly, stating that he will use the dragon girl to become a god, and calling himself a genius. The protagonist, with a serious and disdainful gaze, confronts him, saying that keeping her imprisoned for so long is unforgivable, regardless of her race. He then calls him a worthless criminal. The protagonist declares that no matter what the girl is, keeping her captive is wrong, calling it common sense, something the other might lack. Annoyed at being called a criminal, the man begins trembling with rage and furiously says he will make him pay for it, preparing to attack with full power. The man unleashes a powerful magical attack, shouting for the protagonist to die. However, the protagonist remains calm, activates his own magic, and in an instant, detonates the enemy's attack, destroying everything in front of him. The villain tries to mock him, saying the protagonist's magical defense is nothing against him, but is caught off guard by a quick strike. The protagonist remarks that he expected more strength from him, considering the dragon girl's power. Furious and injured, the man asks how he came out unscathed, while the protagonist, unfazed, asks if that was all he had. The villain grabs the dragon girl, threatening to harm her and absorb all her magic if the protagonist resists. He says he will keep her alive, but doesn't guarantee her body will remain intact. The protagonist, with a serious look, calls him a monster. The protagonist accepts the condition and promises not to touch the enemy, stating that he will nullify all his own magic and skills so as not to put the dragon girl in further danger. Satisfied, the villain agrees and prepares to act. The dragon girl, still trapped and weakened, watches as the villain, with an insane smile, prepares to strike her, shouting that it's time to die. The villain's attack hits the crystal imprisoning the dragon girl, but it doesn't break completely. Instead, resisting with impressive strength, the impact severely injures the aggressor's arm, making him scream in pain, while the other man comments ironically on the crystal's resilience. The villain, surprised, asks how the crystal fell if it was sealed with magic. The protagonist explains that he nullified his own power and skills, which also affected everything around him, breaking the spell. The enemy panics, saying it's impossible to nullify another person's magic, but the hero simply responds with indifference as he walks away, paying no mind. The protagonist states that he came to take the girl out of the crystal. The villain scoffs, saying the crystal is far too strong. Unbothered, the hero delivers a simple strike, and the crystal shatters, leaving the enemy in shock and completely incredulous. The hero pulls the girl out of the crystal, explaining that with the villain's magic nullified, it was easy to break. The enemy panics, rambling about his plan to become a god. Ignoring his complaints, the protagonist grabs him by the face and tells him to shut up, demanding that he stop calling the girl it. The protagonist confirms that the enemy is neutralized and approaches the trapped girl. He asks if she's alright and encourages her to try standing. The young woman, still weak, reacts slowly, blinking as she begins to regain her senses. The girl, still frail, tries to speak and thank him but is interrupted by coughing. She recognizes his voice and admits she didn't believe he would really come to save her. The protagonist assures her she will be fine and, without wasting time, says he will analyze her, surprising her with the sudden action. The protagonist confirms, after analyzing her, that his suspicions were correct. The girl, still shaken, asks how he managed it, but quickly pushes him away, saying that despite being rescued, she can't offer anything in return, calling herself a useless, worthless dragon. He responds that he didn't come looking for a reward. The girl, overtaken by anger, accuses the enemy of imprisoning her for millennia and stealing her birthrights as a dragon. Even weak, she tries to shout that she will never forgive him, but ends up coughing and losing her strength. Her gaze then fills with sadness as she admits she feels useless without her draconic birthrights, calling herself pathetic. The young man asks about the birthrights she mentioned. The girl confirms and says that since he ended up involved, she will explain, to be worthy of being called a dragon, one must possess the 4 birthrights. She explains that the 4 birthrights granted to dragons are long life, self-renewal, destructive power, and dominion over the skies. The villain wanted to become a god by stealing these powers from her. Although she's not sure if a human can truly become a god, she states that the royal lineage of dragons is closely tied to the gods, which intrigues the young man. She reveals she is the youngest daughter of the Dragon King, belonging to dragon royalty. However, because she was born with weak birthrights, she was considered a disgrace to her lineage and expelled from home. Later, she was captured and had those powers taken away, becoming unable to maintain her dragon form. She says that even weak, her birthrights were part of her, and without them, she is no longer a dragon. Carrying this shame for 1,000 years, she begs her savior to kill her, saying she would rather die than continue living that way. The man asks if she carried that burden for 1,000 years, and the girl confirms that even weak, her birthrights were part of her. Now that they were taken, she is no longer a dragon. In desperation, she grabs the young man, saying she can't go on living like this, and begs him to kill her, preferring death over living with such shame. The young man flicks her forehead, saying she's back to normal now. Irritated, she asks why, and he replies that he already said he wouldn't help anyone commit suicide. He then asks what she said to make him come all the way there. The girl, emotional, remembers that she had asked to be saved. He places a hand on her head and says that is exactly why he's here. She states that even free, her birthrights won't return and she'll remain weak. He asks if he can try something, promising he will get them back for her while clearing the way. He also says he will free her from the curse that weakens her, activating a powerful magic circle around her. She watches in surprise as the magic circle activates and asks, shocked, if she had really been cursed all this time. He explains that, according to his skills, he was able to detect and reveal that she was under a rare curse, responsible for weakening her 4 birthrights to the minimum. This allowed the high priest to steal them easily. She reacts in surprise, trying to process the revelation. He says that once the curse is removed, her birthrights should return, and that he will give extra support to speed up the process. He tells her to prepare, warning that it might hurt but to endure it. Then, he activates the disenchant skill, maximizing it and combining it with the Restore skill to break the curse and fully restore her birthrights. The girl begins screaming in pain as the process to remove the curse takes place, her body trembling and staggering. A dark energy is expelled from her as the protagonist maintains the spell, his heart racing with the intensity of the moment. She lets out an intense cry as the curse is ripped from her body, forming a dark mass in the air. Exhausted, she falls to her knees, feeling the weight of that evil energy finally leaving her. She loses strength and faints, but is caught in his arms. He checks if she's still alive, shaking her slightly. With difficulty, she opens her eyes, her heart pounding after everything that happened. She catches her breath, still panting. While he comments that dragons are truly resilient, and he thought she would pass out, she admits she blacked out for a moment. She then notices the strange form in front of them and confirms that it was the curse. He explains that it was so well hidden that not even a normal analysis could detect it, leaving her shocked and disgusted to know that thing had been inside her. He explains that this curse was why everyone considered her a failure. The curse of the evil dragon drastically weakened a dragon's gifts, designed to rob them of their reason to live. Shocked, she says she can't believe it, as the cursed entity writhes and screams while being expelled. The curse expelled from her body flies straight into another man, who begins screaming in pain. She's surprised, asking if the curse entered him. He explains that the spell went to the weakest person it found, and that whoever created it made sure it couldn't return, concluding that what goes around comes around. They realize that the curse, made specifically for dragons, was too strong for a human to endure. The man's body begins to rapidly disintegrate, leaving only his skull on the ground. The girl feels her body rapidly renewing and realizes that the curse has been completely removed. An intense energy begins to flow within her, returning her true power. The young man comments that her self-regeneration ability helped with the quick recovery. The girl, now full of power, releases a massive blast of energy that pierces the ceiling and explodes far away, showing the strength she regained. The young man watches the scene, impressed by the result. The girl, emotional, feels her true strength awakening and shines with happiness. The young man is impressed by her level of power, while she, excited, says she would also like to completely destroy the dungeon. The girl thanks him emotionally for saving her and freeing her from the curse that sealed her power. The young man says it wasn't a big deal, but she insists that he is the one who's on another level, leaving him slightly flustered. The two continue walking together. The girl, embarrassed, asks what he thinks of her current form, and if he likes girls like her. The young man bluntly replies that he's indifferent, leaving her surprised at the answer. The young man notices that his previous answer made her insecure and explains that he's always thought she was beautiful. Since the first time he saw her, he just didn't think it was necessary to say it before. He praises her appearance, comparing her eyes and lips to jewels and commenting on her slender, graceful arms and legs, making it clear he didn't mean to hurt her. Embarrassed by so many compliments, the girl asks him to stop, saying she can't take it anymore. Distracted, he changes the subject and asks if he can analyze her, which she allows. Irritated that he's not listening, she says he's a charmer without realizing it, but admits, blushing, that he's the only one she wouldn't mind giving all her attention to. The young man analyzes the girl's status and is impressed by the absurd numbers, wondering if all dragons are that strong. As he observes, a new piece of information appears in his vision, revealing that she has received a new title. The new title revealed is Celestial Dragon and Her Knight. The young man comments that the name sounds amazing, but the girl is confused by the knight part, concluding that it means he must be hers. The young man asks if it was him who made her a celestial dragon. She explains that this title is given only to dragons who fully trust someone, making that person their knight, which greatly boosts their power. Despite having noble lineage, she says it's not easy to achieve such a title, but believes it happened because he could be her knight. The girl, excited, realizes she hasn't introduced herself yet and says her name is Colette Dubroises, the youngest daughter of the leader of the Gespent Dragons. The young man, named Ariaki, reveals that he had separated from his group and was traveling alone. Colette tries to follow Ariaki, saying they should discuss plans as they walk, but he questions why she thinks she can just accompany him. She insists, saying that he saved the poor little dragon and that now he's her knight and kindred spirit, asking him to take responsibility. Despite her plea, Ariaki says she should return home. Colette reveals that she was banished and can't simply go back. She explains that someone from her own village likely cursed her to remove her from the line of succession, using the so-called curse of the evil dragon. Ariaki understands that returning would be risky, even now that she has regained her birthrights. Ariake apologizes for making her remember bad things, but Colette says she's happy to have met him because of it all. She asks if she can accompany him, and he agrees, telling her to stay as long as she wants after all, since she's his rider. It's only natural they travel together. Colette celebrates, excited to be able to travel with Ariake, and he comments that walking around with a beautiful dragon girl at his side will draw attention. She gets embarrassed by the compliment, but he calls her by name seriously. Ariake says for them to give their best, and Colette, thrilled, agrees enthusiastically, stating they will achieve great things together. As they walk side by side, she calls him her dear dragon knight. Ariake heads to the next city with Colette. She becomes upset upon learning that he was expelled from his former group, questioning what they were thinking. Ariake, however, tells her to calm down and explains that he's happy they can manage on their own, even smiling as he recalls how he was dismissed. As they walk, Ariake says he's glad he helped his former group avoid an early death. Colette then asks if there were women in the group, and he replies, yes, 3. The revelation leaves her visibly irritated and surprised. Determined, Colette promises she won't lose to the women from Ariake's old group, while he remarks that dragons are quite emotional. Elsewhere, Ariake's former group celebrates his departure, laughing and drinking, believing he looked miserable as he left. Ariake's former group laughs together, saying he was extremely annoying. One of them asks Alicia if she agrees, and with a more distant, serious expression, she hesitantly replies that she supposes so. Alicia remarks with a smile that a party without a hero can hardly be called a party, but assures them that as long as she's there, there's nothing to worry about. One member suggests attacking the cursed cave again, and everyone agrees enthusiastically, confident they can continue even after Ariake's departure. While the group laughs and comments that it will be easier without dead weight, Alicia stares out the window, distracted. She says they are missing something, not an item, but something that couldn't be found in that place. Ariake and Colette arrive in the city of medicine. He notes that they are still far from Alti and suggests they rest there. Colette is impressed by the beautiful buildings, saying they look new even after 1,000 years. As they walk through the city, Ariake comments that the place seems prosperous. Colette becomes distracted when she smells something delicious in the distance and insists they go check it out. On the way, they notice they're attracting curious stares from the townsfolk. Ariake realizes people are staring and calls Colette, asking her not to draw too much attention. Excited, she agrees and pulls him toward the source of the smell. Upon arriving, Colette is enchanted and drooling at the enormous variety of delicious foods on display. Colette starts devouring the food enthusiastically, even biting directly into the head of the main dish, while Ariake tries to get her to eat more calmly. He watches in surprise, noting she truly has a dragon's appetite. Delighted with the taste, Colette praises the food, and the shop owner comments on her appetite, while Ariake notes that such good flavor should be drawing in far more customers. While eating, Ariake notices the restaurant is empty and asks why. The owner explains it's because of the Demon's Grove, which appeared suddenly near the city. Its dangerous presence has driven away customers and forced many shops to close, despite the kingdom sending knights. He advises Ariake and Colette to leave before it's too late. Colette asks what the Demon's Grove is, and Ariake explains it's like a monster nest created by the Demon King, but unlike dungeons, monsters can leave and cause trouble. He says these groves have up to 5 stages, the 5th being the most dangerous, and that the current one is probably still at stage 1. If the final boss isn't defeated quickly, the grove will spread and its monsters will grow stronger. Normally a hero is sent before things get worse, but Ariake decides to investigate further to prevent it from interfering with their journey. After the explanation, Ariake decides they should go to the Adventurers Guild. Colette is excited by the idea, but he makes it clear it's not for fun. Walking through the city streets, they approach the guild building and push open the door to enter. Upon entering the Adventurers Guild, they see the place crowded and tense. Many eyes turn toward them, and the heavy atmosphere makes it clear the Demon's Grove is making everyone uneasy. The man approaches the counter and asks the receptionist about the Demon's Grove. Before answering, she asks his name. He introduces himself as Mihama Ariake, rank C adventurer. But as soon as she hears it, the receptionist reacts in shock, shouting loudly and drawing everyone's attention. The moment Ariake's name is mentioned, everyone in the guild starts whispering, recognizing him as the man who was expelled from the hero's party. The nervous receptionist tells him not to run, revealing that there's a royal decree in effect. A large, imposing man enters the room, confirming if Ariake is truly who he says he is. He states he doesn't need proof because he recognizes him perfectly from his appearance and from a poster he carries. Surprised that Ariake showed up there, he introduces himself as Oshima, the guildmaster, and reveals that the king issued a decree specifically for him, laughing loudly at the situation. The guildmaster announces loudly that Mihama Ariake's adventurer license is officially revoked, leaving Ariake shocked, while his companion watches with concern. After his license is revoked, Ariake surprises Colette by smiling, saying it was something he expected and that he was only in the guild out of obligation. Confused, she asks why he seems so happy, while he jokes that now he can no longer take on missions or buy supplies. Ariake questions why his license was revoked now, mentioning that he heard about the nearby Demon's Grove and suggesting they might need all the help they can get. The guildmaster refuses with disdain, saying they don't need help from a hero party reject, while other adventurers mock him, accusing him of trying to get his license back and claiming that the Royal Knights are already handling the problem. After the adventurers' taunts, the girl suggests she could burn them, but Ariake stops her, saying it would only cause more trouble. He starts thinking about the situation, finding it strange that the Royal Knights were sent to handle the Demon's Grove when the hero's party, which was closer, wasn't called. This makes him suspect something might have happened. The guildmaster says that once the Royal Knights defeat the Grove's boss, the local adventurers will take care of the rest, making it clear they don't need Ariake. Some adventurers mock him, calling him little boy and telling him to go home. Despite the tension in the air, Ariake simply tells them to leave, ignoring the provocations, while his companion reacts in surprise and worry. Suddenly, the guild doors burst open, and a severely wounded knight staggers inside, leaving bloodstains on the wall. He breathes heavily, clearly exhausted and near collapse, as everyone reacts in shock, murmuring and trying to understand what happened. The knight tries to speak urgently, but can barely finish his sentence. The bloodied, exhausted knight finally delivers the news that shocks everyone. The siege of the Demon's Grove has failed. Silence falls over the room for a moment as looks of shock and worry spread, including on Ariake's serious face. The wounded knight desperately announces that a monster horde is on the way, and that the Royal Knights have been completely defeated. He issues an official emergency request for all adventurers to defend the city immediately, warning that anyone who tries to flee will be executed. The tension rises and shock spreads among everyone present. The adventurers panic upon learning the Royal Knights were defeated and that execution awaits those who try to escape. Many question how they could win if even the knights failed. Ariake realizes the monsters followed the surviving knights to the city and checks that the messenger is still alive but unconscious. Ariake prefers to avoid drawing attention, but he recognizes the situation is worse than he thought. While his companion asks if he couldn't defeat the monsters easily, the adventurers panic. The guildmaster slams the table hard and orders everyone to pull themselves together. The guildmaster scolds the adventurers, saying panic won't save them and that if they don't act, they'll all die anyway. Some begin to agree but remain unsure what to do, while Ariake observes silently. His companion calls out to him, and Ariake comments that at least someone is still willing to do their duty. He walks to the guildmaster, tossing something on the floor, catching the man's attention, who asks what he wants. Ariake looks confidently at the guildmaster and, pointing to himself, tells him to leave that mission in his hands. The guildmaster repeats in disbelief if he should leave it to Ariake, reminding him that a horde of monsters is coming and asking what he'll do about it. Ariake calmly tells him to relax. The guildmaster reveals that the reward for the defense is only 1 gold coin, which angers the adventurers. Ariake agrees it's too little and begins telling them something as he walks, sparking curiosity and murmurs among those present. The protagonist shocks everyone by lifting a sack full of coins, letting the metallic sound echo through the room. The coins pile up on the floor, catching everyone's eyes. With a confident expression, the protagonist announces that he will reward anyone who fights to the end, encouraging the adventurers to join the defense. He declares he will give 100 gold coins to each adventurer who fights, stunning everyone. He states it will be a valid contract under royal law, making it clear it's a direct agreement between him and those present. Everyone reacts in surprise upon hearing the contract would be made under royal law, which means no one can break it, making it almost like a curse. The protagonist confirms that 100 gold coins can buy practically anything, urging them to take the opportunity. Excited, the adventurers start imagining how they would use the money from feeding their families to renovating their homes. With the royal army defeated, the protagonist states that only they can save the city. He asks if the adventurers will allow the monsters to destroy their peace, and, addressing them by title, urges everyone to risk their lives in exchange for the extraordinary reward he promised. With determination and everyone's attention, the protagonist orders the adventurers to rise and fight to protect the city. As he speaks, those present watch him seriously, feeling the weight of his words. His words ignite the adventurers' spirits. One by one, they begin declaring that they will fight, motivated both by the money and the desire to protect their home. Soon, the hall is filled with shouts of determination and readiness to face the monsters. With everyone motivated, the guildmaster orders preparations to begin. The adventurers respond with enthusiastic cries as they organize gear and open crates full of supplies for the coming battle. Preparations continue as the adventurers sort all healing potions and ready themselves to join the frontline group. The burly man praises the motivational speech and thanks him, saying none of this would have been possible without his help. The protagonist replies simply accepting the thanks. The man comments that being rank C and with his license revoked, he didn't expect the protagonist to convince anyone, but admits he now seems inspiring. The girl, annoyed, scolds him for calling her master incompetent and reminds him that he also insulted him before. Embarrassed, the big man admits he feels bad about what he said, while the protagonist points out that he was the one who offered the reward. The protagonist says it's the duty of those at the top to pay fairly since people can't survive without money. He calls it absurd to make someone risk their life for just one gold coin. The girl, impressed, praises his intelligence and asks how he got so much money, to which he replies that he simply saved it, surprising her with the amount. The man notes that, despite everything, the protagonist still has no connection to the city. He admits this, and when asked why he's helping, the protagonist says he likes a local restaurant with a green roof that serves great seafood pasta, surprising them with his simple reason. He remarks that it would be terrible not to be able to eat that pasta again, revealing his simple reason for helping. The man beside him smiles, amused by the carefree answer. The older man pats the protagonist on the back, saying that if they survive, he'll use the reward to pay for a banquet. Meanwhile, the adventurers gather, ready to act. The guildmaster warns everyone that the city of medicine has only fences and trenches for defense, urging them to prepare. The guildmaster explains the plan. Mages will provide ranged support, while defenders hold the front line. He reminds them that if they fall, the city will be lost as well, and that despite the situation seeming hopeless after the knight's defeat, they must win. Motivated, everyone shouts together that they will fight and return home. Colette notes that the adventurers are fired up but worries whether they can actually win, since they're only about 100 against 1,000 enemies. She asks if he will face the monsters alone, but he explains that although it would be easier for him, having someone do everything for them wouldn't help in the long run. He explains that he's doing this so the adventurers can gain confidence, because without it, they won't be able to defend the city in the future. His goal is for them to work together and win on their own. Colette reacts in surprise, and as the battle begins, the two head to the battlefield. He acknowledges that the adventurers need to win by their own strength, but decides that offering a little support won't hurt. With a confident smile, he prepares to assist in the fight. 4 kilometers north of Medicine, the last line of defense readies itself against the approaching enemy horde. The commander roars orders, telling them to push forward and attack the center, where the enemy formation is weakest. On the battlefield, the commander saves an ally from an enemy strike, ordering those low on energy to retreat and for support to strengthen the attackers. While fighting, he notices an explosion in the distance and wonders what the Negla brothers are up to. The Negla brothers fight fiercely against the enemies, but begin to feel the pressure of the battle. One warns that one of the healers is out of mana, while the monsters keep advancing relentlessly, putting them in a critical situation. During the intense battle, one of the Negla brothers is injured, but they keep fighting with determination. They shout for everyone to stay focused, since the city's defense depends on it. They encourage the others to attack and fight with all they have to prevent the enemy from advancing. The battlefield grows increasingly chaotic. A third of the left flank falls, and the Negla brothers are severely wounded. The right flank calls for reinforcements, but the guildmaster refuses, saying there are no men to spare and they'll have to hold on their own. The situation worsens when a caterpillar dragon appears, requiring at least 3 rank A adventurers to face it. Amid the fierce battle, a messenger runs to the guildmaster to report that another section is also in crisis, with fighters being overwhelmed by enemies. In the chaos, the man points to something in the distance, making the guildmaster visibly tense at the approaching threat. A massive ogre appears before the adventurers, its imposing presence casting a tense silence over the battlefield. The guildmaster faces the creature seriously, as everyone around feels the weight of the threat that has arrived. The guildmaster looks on in shock, recognizing the creature as an ogre king, an S-class monster. The surrounding adventurers react with alarm and concern, fully aware they are facing an extremely dangerous threat. The Ogre King responds with a menacing roar, prompting the guildmaster to order everyone to flee immediately. The thunderous sound echoes across the field as pressure and fear spread among the adventurers, who hastily retreat from the imminent danger. The battlefield is littered with fallen adventurers after the Ogre King's advance. Many are wounded or incapacitated, and the guildmaster struggles to move. Desperate cries for healers ring out, but few can respond. A healer, lying on the ground and helpless, sees a goblin closing in to attack her. The moment is quick and intense. She closes her eyes, resigned to the coming blow, as blood splatters, signaling that something or someone acted suddenly. A swordsman appears and cuts down the goblin with a precise strike, saving the healer at the last instant. With his cloak billowing and sword still raised, he positions himself in front of her, ready to face the next enemy. The elf watches in surprise as the enemy's head rolls to the ground. Still shaken, she tries to speak, but the swordsman explains that the skill used was Conquer, from the Ogre King, capable of paralyzing ordinary adventurers. He then asks if she's injured. The elf tries to thank him, but before she can continue, a cheerful girl interrupts, saying she's glad the elf is okay. The swordsman politely acknowledges this. The guildmaster appears, calling him Ariaki, praising his performance, and receiving a remark to mind his words. An adventurer questions why a rank C is on the front line, warning that he could die. The swordsman replies that it was his own request, and therefore his responsibility to act. As he prepares to face the next threat, the swordsman adds that it's his responsibility to ensure everything turns out well. Beside him, his companion smiles confidently, showing she's ready to face whatever comes next. The swordsman declares that the battle is far from over and urges everyone to stand and fight. He then activates a special skill, showing his determination to turn the tide against the enemy. A wave of energy spreads, increasing everyone's mental resistance and nullifying the Ogre King's paralysis ability. The adventurers regain their movement, and the swordsman calls Colette into action as she dashes toward the next step of the plan. Colette leaps with full force, the ground cracking where she pushed off. With a confident smile, she soars toward the enemies, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. With a devastating impact, Colette hits the ground like a meteor, creating an explosion that sends enemies flying. The shock is so strong that foes scream in pain as they're engulfed by the force of the strike. Colette returns smiling, flashing a victory sign and asking the guildmaster if the result was as he expected. He remarks that she's still as powerful as ever, while an enemy watches in shock, unable to understand what kind of creature she is. The group realizes they are heavily outnumbered, 10-1. Despite the enemy's continued advance, the protagonist says he'll use an ability that can boost their side's stats tenfold to even the odds. The protagonist reveals that, in addition to boosting his group's stats tenfold, he will also reduce the enemy's stats to a tenth. The guildmaster reacts in disbelief, saying it's impossible to affect the whole horde, but the protagonist confidently says it's possible. The guildmaster watches with concern, but the protagonist reassures him, telling everyone to focus only on victory. He then begins to activate a special skill, forming a large magic circle on the ground and announcing the passive activation of a technique called Party-Wide Net. He applies the skill's effect to all adventurers within range, spreading the power across the battlefield to strengthen allies. The protagonist starts by using damage reduction to protect everyone, even as the leader notes there are about 100 people in the group. He says he knows, and continues, making allies feel their bodies grow tougher. He then warns that he's not done yet, hinting that more boosts are coming. He begins by activating the agility skill, increasing everyone's speed. Then he applies evasion boost to improve dodge chances, followed by divine blessing, which frequently negates damage, and finishes with chance evasion, further raising the likelihood of enemy attacks missing. The group is impressed by how much stronger they've become, confident they now have the advantage. The protagonist continues activating skills, starting with damage reduction and status ailment resistance. Then he applies an impressive chain of buffs: attack boost, magic power boost, magic resistance, health and mana recovery, instant death immunity, critical rate boost, and more, totaling 20 enhancements. Allies are shocked by the number of buffs, while he's already thinking about weakening the enemy. Casually, the protagonist announces he'll invert all the buffs given to allies and apply them as debuffs to enemies. Then an ally charges in, cutting down several foes with ease. The allies notice a dramatic change after receiving the buffs, feeling much stronger and faster. Once at a disadvantage, they now cut through enemies effortlessly. A warrior remarks that normally only 3 buffs can be active, but the protagonist managed to stack 20, making the fight extremely easy for the group. The group receives an effect that strengthens all nearby adventurers. The protagonist starts by applying damage reduction, making their skin tougher, followed by agility boosts, evasion, divine blessing, and dodge chance. Then he adds damage proportion reduction, status ailment resistance, and many other enhancements, totaling 20 buffs. After that, he inverts all the buffs to weaken the enemy, allowing allies to push forward and turn the battle in their favor. The fighters realize how much stronger they are and say they've never fought this well, discovering that the protagonist always did this in the hero's party, stacking even more than 20 enhancements if counting the minor buffs. The black-haired protagonist says he always did this when he was in the hero's party, explaining that counting the small boosts, it would be even more. The others are surprised to realize that with so many buffs, anyone could win, and that the group's success may have been thanks to him. The girl is outraged that he supported the group for so many years, and yet they still expelled him. The protagonist calmly says he accepted that they no longer needed his abilities, comparing it to a father letting his children walk on their own. Even so, he still shows concern over whether they'll be okay. As the monsters advance, the soldiers trust in the protagonist's protection and keep fighting. The girl notes that the enemy ogre still hasn't moved, wondering if it's being cautious or just relying on its subordinates. The protagonist, meanwhile, thinks about making them stop calling him Lord. The protagonist notices it's strange for an ogre king to appear at this stage of the area, as they usually show up at different times. He remarks that even with all his buffs, a normal person would struggle against it. The girl, excited by the strength of the enemy, shows eagerness to fight, and the protagonist tells her she can take it on if she wants. The protagonist states the adventurers wouldn't be able to handle the enemy and asks Colette if she can face it. Colette charges forward quickly. The protagonist notices the ogre is aiming at a specific point. The creature then strikes the ground with a powerful blow, causing a massive shockwave. Colette holds a large boulder above her, grumbling that protecting humans is a real hassle. Colette cheerfully introduces herself for battle, saying they can call her Lady Colette, while the protagonist asks them not to encourage that. He orders them to leave the Ogre King to them and handle the rest. The ogre then prepares to attack again, showing strength and determination. The protagonist comments that the ogre's breathing is getting annoying, and Colette agrees. Annoyed, she rushes in and lands a direct and powerful blow to the enemy's face. After taking the hit, the ogre remains standing, and Colette stares at him seriously. She closes her eyes for a moment, focusing on her next move. The protagonist activates multiple boosts and skills to increase his power and weaken the enemy. He then moves quickly and lands a precise kick on the ogre, exploiting an opening. The protagonist's strike knocks the ogre off balance, making him fall heavily to the ground, impressing the spectators. Colette praises him but is caught off guard when the still conscious creature grabs her leg. The ogre hurls Colette forcefully against the ground, causing a huge explosion of debris. The protagonist calls out to her in concern, while an ally fears she'll die, but he denies it, saying that's not the case. As the ogre prepares to continue his attack, the protagonist notices Colette seems fine. She stands up with a fierce and determined look, promising to show what she's capable of. The protagonist allows Colette to advance, reminding her that she is his dragon knight. With a confident smile, he encourages her to show the enemy their full strength. The fighters finish off the smaller enemies and clear the side areas, announcing that only the ogre remains. An ally calls out to the protagonist, informing him that his group has already finished their part. The ogre, enraged, lets out a powerful roar as a whirlwind of energy forms in the sky, signaling that he's about to unleash a devastating attack. The ogre begins preparing another attack, but the protagonist and Colette stand firm. He thinks about her power, remembering that the curse was recently broken, and that despite being the celestial dragon, her abilities haven't fully awakened. Still, he worries about the effects of this power on her. Colette, confident, asks to finish the fight. The protagonist fills Colette with multiple buffs, making her question if he's underestimating her abilities. He admits to overdoing it, still stuck in the habit of being overly cautious. Colette accepts the help and prepares to fight with determination. Revitalized by the buffs, Colette declares she's brimming with power and charges forward with speed and energy toward the enemy. The protagonist senses something different, as if an energy is resonating or emerging from within Colette. It's revealed that dragons with a knight can access their knight's power, allowing them to reach their true potential. The protagonist tells Colette that if she truly is a celestial dragon, she can use his power however she wishes. He then activates the skill, Final Gambit, releasing an intense energy to empower her even more. Colette reveals her true form, transforming into a mighty divine dragon called Gespent God Dragon, radiating overwhelming power. The allies watch in shock at Colette's transformation. The protagonist explains that the final gambit skill allows the target to regain their innate power for a short time. He reflects that by using it, Colette can manifest her full true power without suffering negative effects, and admits that seeing her in action is even more impressive than he imagined. In her celestial dragon form, Colette faces the Ogre King and declares that, together with her dragon knight Mihama Ariaki, she will judge him. The scene displays her power and majesty, ready for the decisive battle. In her celestial dragon form, Colette gathers a massive amount of energy in her mouth, while a powerful vortex forms, preparing to unleash a devastating fire attack. From above, Colette fires her attack called Final Fury, releasing massive energy blasts directly at the Ogre King, marking the decisive blow of the battle. The protagonist hurls a weapon at high speed, creating a powerful impact as it slices through the air toward the target. The allies are shocked to see the Ogre King completely disintegrated. Colette returns to her normal form, relieved, while the protagonist watches the battle's end. After the battle, the protagonist catches Colette as she lands and praises her performance. She, cheerful and smiling, says the experience was amazing. The allies watch in awe at the victory and comment on the hero's strength. One warrior asks if it's over, and the protagonist confirms that the area boss, the Ogre King, has been defeated, declaring victory over the demon forest. After confirming the battle is over, some consider the victory a miracle. The protagonist, however, says it wasn't luck or chance, praising everyone's courage for facing monsters capable of defeating even the kingdom's knights. The protagonist commends everyone for facing the enemies to protect the city and for risking their lives, saying the victory belongs to them. He then announces it's time to return home. The group returns victorious, welcomed with joy and celebrations from their allies. Colette and the protagonist walk side by side, surrounded by smiles and congratulations for their hard-earned victory. After resting enough, the protagonist decides to leave, surprising the townsfolk who wanted him to stay longer. Tired of the excessive attention of the last few days, he thanks them for their support and bids farewell, while the guildmaster asks everyone to respect his decision and let him go. The guildmaster apologizes for his earlier behavior and says he has already sent a letter to the kingdom to reverse the revocation of the protagonist's license. He thanks him, surprised, and the master invites him to return any time, promising to prepare his favorite food. The protagonist accepts the invitation with a smile and shakes the guildmaster's hand, who wishes him safety and gives him a blessing. He then leaves the city in a carriage while the townspeople wave goodbye. During the carriage ride, Colette excitedly celebrates her celestial form experience and praises the power they were able to unleash. Curious, she asks where they're going, and the protagonist explains they'll head to Olden Town, passing through the Forest of Abundance, where elves live, taking advantage of the letter he received as an opportunity to stop there. On the way, Colette is surprised to hear they'll be visiting elves, commenting that they're known for being hard to please. The protagonist explains that it depends on the individual, but confirms they're reserved. She cheerfully says that if there's trouble, she'll burn everything, making him worried and asking her to consider less destructive alternatives. Meanwhile, he begins reflecting on unresolved matters from the previous mission, wondering if he's overthinking it. Colette tries to cheer the protagonist up, saying it's not the time to worry, and suggesting they enjoy the trip and eat without rushing. He ends up agreeing, trying to convince himself there's nothing to worry about, as the carriage continues on its way. However, the scene cuts to a dark place where something mysterious drips onto the ground, hinting that a new problem is coming. In a cave, the hero appears wounded and exhausted, trying to make sense of the situation. He staggers, thinking how absurd it is to be going through this, believing they should be safe. Desperate, he realizes they will be completely annihilated and panics, questioning how that monster managed to appear there. As they run desperately through the cave, one man tries to warn about companions left behind, but the hero shouts for him to forget them and keep running. With a look of panic and anger, he orders them to speed up before the enemy catches them. A giant monster emerges, roaring, taking the group by surprise. The hero reacts quickly, pushing an ally out of harm's way while attacking the creature with determination to try to hold it back. The fight against the monster intensifies, but the shield bearer is already out of potions and mana, injured and desperate. He struggles to stand firm, while the hero, in shock, can't understand how such a difficult situation could happen in a dungeon that should be simple, questioning why something like this is happening to an S-rank hero like him. A few hours earlier, the group was preparing to enter the cursed lair. The hero confidently said that reaching the 50th floor would just be a warm-up. The companions commented that with an S-rank hero leading, the mission would be easy, as even C-rank adventurers could get that far. However, the priestess showed concern, questioning if they had brought enough items and saying they might need more. The group discussed preparing better before advancing, since Ariake was no longer with them. The hero, however, dismissed the idea, saying there was no need for such a low-level dungeon. Alicia insisted, accusing him of wanting to avoid effort, and questioning if he intended to rely only on items instead of support magic. Other members mocked, saying it was better without that useless guy, and that Alicia worried too much. The group continued arguing, with Alicia trying to explain she didn't mean it that way, but being interrupted by teasing, they commented on Ariake's absence, saying now she would have to light the dungeon in his place. Pulala laughed, saying it would be easy for a great mage like her. Other members agreed, saying it would be more fun without the dead weight Ariake represented. Vivia displayed confidence as she interacted with her companions, receiving support and even affection from Delia. Meanwhile, she arrogantly thought that all of them were easy to manipulate, except Alicia, who would require more effort, but whom she would also win over. Convinced of her destiny, she believed that as the chosen hero, she would defeat the Demon King, win the princess as a reward, and become king, ruling over all. Alicia watched the group walk away, muttering to herself that it was inevitable, and that at least she had tried to warn them. As the adventurers went through the tunnel, Vivia reacted to a sudden sound, only to realize it was just a bat, showing irritation at the realization. As they walked, Vivia was startled by Pulala, who reacted timidly. Annoyed, he complained about the darkness of the place, saying they wouldn't be able to see the enemies like this. Pulala tried to justify herself, saying she couldn't illuminate more than that, but Vivia was dissatisfied with the answer. The group continued through the cave as one member commented that Ariake could easily light up the whole place. Pulala confirmed but hesitated, explaining that only he had that ability. Alicia then revealed that Ariake was the only one capable of it, leaving Vivia intrigued at the mention of his name. Alicia explained that Ariake had already mentioned that dungeons are like living organisms, filled with their own magic. Therefore, unlike normal buildings, this environment greatly weakens the magic of outsiders. Vivia, irritated, said he couldn't remember everything Ariake had said, while something began to move in the shadows, preparing to attack him. Delia struck a creature with force, hurling it against the dungeon wall. As the enemy fell, she asked them to stop talking about Ariake and keep moving forward. Pulala sighed in relief at seeing the situation under control. The group faced a tough creature that, even after direct hits, was still not defeated. Surprise took over everyone, as normally a single strike would be enough. Delia, annoyed, began gathering magical energy to launch another attack against the enemy. With impressive speed and strength, Delia charged at the monster, delivering a devastating sequence of punches that exploded into successive impacts, shaking the creature completely. Delia delivered a final crushing blow, completely destroying the monster, which fell lifeless to the ground. Panting, she asked how she did, while one of her companions confirmed that the creature was indeed dead. After the battle, the group realizes that the enemy was stronger than normal. Vivi, irritated by the darkness and blaming the lack of visibility, harshly criticizes Pulala for being unable to maintain the light, questioning her abilities as a mage. Pulala is visibly shaken, while one of their companions tries to ease the situation. Vivia soon realizes the weight of his words and apologizes to the group, saying that everyone is still adjusting to their new roles. He assures them that Pulala is doing her best and that they can continue on their way. Pulala, though frightened, accepts the apology. The atmosphere lightens when everyone expresses confidence in Vivia, reaffirming his role as a hero. After the group calms down, Vivia encourages them to keep going, but Alicia questions if it's safe and suggests retreating to find another approach, since they aren't used to fighting in such darkness. Vivia tries to reassure Delia, saying Alicia is only worried, but Delia reacts defensively, accusing Alicia of trying to boss the leader around. Vivia says that retreating would only bring more danger, accusing Alicia of being overly cautious. He decides the group will press forward, calling it a hero's order. The other members praise his leadership, and he responds with confidence. Vivia asks if Alicia understands his order, but notices she ignores him. Feeling disrespected, he grows furious, thinking that first she tries to order him around, and then looks down on him, calling her a damned saint in his thoughts. Vivia thinks that retreating from a rank C dungeon would be a disgrace that would make both the public and the kingdom abandon him. He blames Pulala for the situation and insists nothing is his fault, justifying that he had to take charge because Delia and Elga were too slow. On the way, Elga notices they've passed the same place before and asks if they're lost, which visibly irritates Delia. Elga admits she got lost because of the darkness, and Delia explains that even with a complete map, it's still hard to navigate in this environment. She says Ariake had guided them before by making constant notes and revisions to the incomplete map. Soon, she finds a mark left earlier, indicating there should be a staircase up ahead. Alicia questions if Vivia is really prepared to continue, reminding him they're only halfway through on the 25th floor. She points out that the group is already struggling due to the darkness, and that if Ariake were here, he would have advised retreat. Vivia argues with Alicia, saying they've come too far for her to start complaining now. Alicia replies that she just wants him to proceed with caution because the enemies will get stronger on the next floors. Irritated, Vivia says she talks too much about Ariake and that it bothers him, insisting the group is simply adapting to the new formation. He then tries to hurry everyone along. Suddenly, a piercing sound echoes through the area, putting everyone on alert. The group looks around, confused and tense, as a strange black smoke begins spreading through the surroundings, heightening the sense of imminent danger. A horrible feeling takes over the group, making some tremble in fear. Pulala asks, terrified, if there's a boss monster nearby, something that shouldn't exist on this floor. Alicia, serious, warns that something is coming. Everyone prepares for battle, though some can barely stand, as heavy footsteps approach. Out of the darkness emerges a skeleton knight, and the group feels relieved that it isn't a more dangerous enemy. The hero mocks it, saying it's just a weakling from a rank C dungeon, and confidently prepares to attack. The hero lands a clean hit on the skeleton knight, destroying it easily and boasting about being a rank S hero. He smiles confidently, receiving praise from one of the girls, who calls him amazing. The hero grins after defeating the enemy, but suddenly notices something strange. Without warning, the skeleton, still active, strikes him with a blade, shocking his companions. Wounded and confused, the hero can't understand how the enemy is still standing after a fatal blow. The skeleton laughs wickedly as the hero notices a hole in his abdomen and questions how the foe managed to counterattack. Before he can react, the creature grabs his weapon, heightening the tension. Shaken and weakening rapidly, the hero tries to grasp the situation as blood drips. Trembling and coughing, he realizes something terrible has happened, screaming in desperation at a reality he can't accept. Already gravely wounded, the hero takes another deep cut, crying out in pain. The intensity is so great that his body no longer responds, leaving him completely vulnerable to the enemy. The skeleton rushes at the group, prompting one of the warriors to shout for Vivia to be careful. He tries to intercept but realizes the foe's speed is too great. Meanwhile, the skeletal monster laughs menacingly, pressing its advantage. The group tries to make sense of the situation, noting that the skeleton knight not only wounded Vivia, but also dodged a direct attack, something unusual for this type of monster. Normally, they're weak creatures, easily beaten by level 20 adventurers, yet this one is showing abnormal strength and agility. The skeleton strikes hard, forcing the warrior to retreat while trying to hold the advance. Despite his strength, he struggles to push back the enemy, while another member urges him to react faster, questioning if all that muscle is just for show. As the two warriors bicker mid-battle, a woman rushes toward them angrily, complaining they're in her way. With a determined expression, she prepares a powerful attack, declaring she will unleash a relentless blow. She delivers a devastating strike to the skeleton knight, thinking she's dealt a fatal hit. The skeleton knight unleashes an energy-charged attack that hits her directly, electrocuting her. She screams in pain before collapsing, while her companions react with alarm at her injury. The group is stunned by the enemy's strength, realizing a simple strike caused massive damage. The girl insists she's using her best reinforcement spells for both attack and defense, but the man starts suspecting something's wrong, as their strength shouldn't be this low. The protagonist, surprised and irritated, asks the group if they're truly at their peak power. The revelation that this is their best performance leaves them even more worried. The protagonist strikes the skeleton quickly, but the scene shows the shocked frustration of the injured girl, refusing to believe what's happening. She, a rank S hero, cannot accept being defeated by someone she sees as weak, repeating to herself that it's impossible. The protagonist, desperate, looks at his blood-covered hand and shouts, unable to understand why this is happening, demanding answers. A radiant light fills the battlefield as feathers drift through the air. The priestess casts a powerful area healing spell called Angel's Breath, restoring strength and healing everyone in range. The wounded begin recovering under the glow, calling out to Alicia. With a serious tone, she states that the reason they're in this mess is obvious. The real cause is that Ariake isn't with them. During the fight, one of the heroes questions why Alicia mentioned Ariake, claiming he just stood around watching and had nothing to do with it. Alicia calmly splashes holy water on the enemy, explaining that it can immobilize undead monsters. She adds that since he seems to ignore many things, she'll make another important point clear. Alicia reveals that Ariake's support ability allowed anyone to reach rank A adventurer level, boosting attack, defense, and enhancing buffs in an extraordinary way. The hero, in disbelief, insists his strength was achieved on his own, but Alicia reminds him how he always ignored Ariake's words and replied only with insults. She says Ariake wouldn't be shaken by something so trivial and, changing the subject, asks if everyone can now stand. She proposes adjusting the strategy, insisting they can't go on without Ariake. Even acknowledging that retreat may be hard, she stresses it's not viable to continue, surprising the hero with the idea of pulling back. With a serious cold gaze, Alicia says continuing the mission would only bring death. She then turns away and starts walking, declaring they will immediately withdraw from the dungeon, leaving no room for debate. The group retreats exhausted, and one member complains they only made it back to the 15th floor, feeling completely drained. They ask Alicia to heal them more, but she replies that while it's possible, using so much of her magic to heal everyone would be unwise, as it would consume too much of her energy. One member suggests using potions, but they find only a few left. When they ask Pulala to hand over one of hers, she refuses, saying she has few as well. Alicia says she also needs to use magic, but they confront her, noting she wasn't using any. She answers that she's conserving energy as a precaution, revealing her MP exceeds 10,000. The group questions if Pulala is telling the truth about having little MP. Alicia says that as fellow magic users, it's possible to tell Pulala's MP is nearly depleted, evident from her weakening magical light. Pulala reacts indignantly to the accusation. As the group notices the area getting darker, Alicia explains it's because Pulala's magic is running out. She reveals that Pulala's huge MP capacity of 10,000 points was only possible thanks to Ariake's support ability, and that she too ignored his warnings. Pulala becomes furious, laughing nervously and accusing Alicia of lying to get revenge for past teasing. She refuses to believe her power came from Ariake, while Alicia calmly says the true arrogance came from her, emphasizing that Pulala's strength existed only because of Ariake's support ability. Pulala loses control, angrily warning Alicia to watch her words and preparing to attack, while one companion tries to intervene and asks her to stop. The tension is broken when a powerful voice echoes through the tunnel, ordering silence and unleashing a dark presence that fills the area. The mysterious figure accuses the group of daring to disturb its rest, leaving everyone shocked and uneasy. A huge wolf emerges from the shadows, revealed to be Fenrir, a legendary creature. The group is stunned, and one member panics upon realizing it's a monster from the 99th floor, questioning how it could be there. They're shaken to see Fenrir appear before them. The presence of such a floor boss-level creature leaves them confused and alarmed, unable to understand why it's in this place. Fenrir glares at the group with a threatening look, disdainfully commenting that the noise came only from insignificant humans, but that at least they'll serve as a meal. Panic takes hold of everyone, as they realize even rank S adventurers would struggle against it. They wonder why a 99th floor boss is here and fear this might be the end. The group realizes that fighting Fenrir isn't an option, and decides to run. However, escaping won't be easy. Alicia, being a rank S adventurer and healer, can't be sacrificed. Delia is also needed for future battles. Thus, they conclude that Elga could be used as a shield to serve as a distraction. When Elga tries to warn about the need to flee immediately, Vivia strikes her in the stomach, knocking her to the ground. He then grabs her and begins dragging her, making it clear that he will use her as bait to handle the situation. Vivia takes some hidden items, justifying that they will be used for the escape. Meanwhile, he is confronted by the others for wanting to leave Elga behind. He tries to argue that it is not abandonment, but rather a strategy to seek help, even if it means leaving her in immediate danger. Vivia claims that Elga is out of magic, and that the group would have a better chance without her, prioritizing his own survival. Delia, though reluctant, agrees that they need to seek help immediately, leaving Elga shocked and feeling betrayed. Vivia tells Pulala to hold out as long as possible until help arrives, while coldly thinking that she should buy time before dying. Alicia, ignoring the order to retreat, states that she will face Fenrir alone, leaving Vivia shocked by her decision. Alicia raises her staff as an intense light begins to shine around her. With a determined gaze, she orders the group to move forward, showing that she is resolved to face the danger alone. Vivia realizes that Alicia used barrier magic and thinks that this will give them time to escape, even if it means sacrificing her along with another companion. While fleeing, Ignis and Delia question whether he really intends to leave them behind, but he keeps running, determined to save only himself. Pulala, furious at being abandoned, screams that she will never forgive them for this. Filled with hatred, she curses them all, swearing she will wish for the death of each one of them. Pulala is surprised when Fenrir asks if she really has time to curse someone, while Alicia comments that she makes it look easy to cast curses. Fenrir reveals that this is true because he is present, but also admits that he doesn't feel motivated without him around. Seeing the situation as unfavorable, Alicia thinks about what she could do, while Pulala begs her to stop talking and act quickly, as she doesn't want to die. Alicia tells Pulala to be quiet, confidently stating that she has no intention of dying that day. Fenrir looks into her eyes and notices they are full of determination, recognizing the firmness of her resolve. Fenrir questions Alicia about her motivations, asking if she seeks revenge or to save the world. She responds that she doesn't care about those things, and says there is only one reason she fights. Alicia cheerfully reveals that the only reason to fight is to meet Ariake again and get all romantic with him. Her statement leaves everyone confused, while she, embarrassed, tries to justify her words. Blushing, Alicia declares that Ariake is her beloved and the only true hero of that world. Pulala reacts in disbelief, questioning how someone without unique abilities could be so important, but Alicia simply comments that she's being rude. Alicia corrects Pulala, saying that Ariake is not someone without a unique ability, and that to her, his very existence is already something special. She then asks Fenrir for a few moments to talk, and he, finding the situation interesting, agrees. Alicia reveals that she believes Ariake's unique ability is called God of Buffs. She explains that she researched many records until she found this answer, an ancient legend over 1,000 years old, leaving Pulala surprised and curious about what kind of ability that would be. The scene shows Alicia recalling an old story told by the elderly women of the village, which said that one day a hero would appear to save the world and would be aided by a god capable of providing great variety of support. Surprised, Pulala questions if Alicia is implying that Ariake is that god. Alicia explains that she doesn't believe Ariake is literally a god, but rather someone chosen by one. She compares his ability to the god of buffs from the legends, stating that without him, the Demon King could not have been defeated. According to her, Ariake is an indispensable ally, providing all kinds of support, whether through strengthening skills, item management, or dungeon guidance, and that the group only made it this far thanks to him. Alicia says that Ariake provides the perfect support for a group of heroes, just like in fairy tales, and that their power came from him. She reminds them that without Ariake, they had trouble even against a simple skeleton knight, something this dungeon made clear. Pulala, shocked, begins to realize the dependence they had on him, and tries to argue but is left speechless. Alicia comments that time is up but is satisfied that she managed to express how strong Ariake is. Fenrir interrupts, asking if they are done, and Alicia hands over some support items, saying they will be enough for them to assist her from a distance. The girl, exhausted, says she can barely move her legs. Fenrir says that crushing a pest like her would be easy, but he won't let her escape, as he has been trapped in that dungeon for a long time. He decides that perhaps she could at least relieve his boredom, even if only for a short time. The giant wolf charges forward, smashing the ground and sending debris flying, while the two girls watch from a distance. The girl runs desperately carrying the items, while her companion watches in surprise at her speed. The wolf comments that the barrier has disappeared and that he could easily catch the one who fled. The young woman keeps a determined gaze, stating that it doesn't matter. The wolf observes her closely, realizing that something about her has changed. The young woman reveals that the barrier wasn't to aid in the escape, but to prevent interference in her path. The wolf senses something strange and charges ferociously, cutting her words short. The wolf lunges with force and strikes the ground, sending debris scattering everywhere with the impact. The woman firmly grabs the giant wolf's paw, stopping his attack. The enemy looks at her in surprise, not understanding how she managed to stop him. She stares at the wolf with a confident smile, asking if he really believed he could defeat her with a single blow. Meanwhile, the ground beneath her feet begins to crack from the force she exerts. With a confident look, the woman prepares to counterattack, declaring that she will show the enemy her full power. The atmosphere turns tense, indicating that the real fight is about to begin. The battle continues intensely, and the woman lands a powerful blow that sends the wolf crashing into the wall, causing a huge impact. He gets up, staggering, surprised by her strength, While she admits that without her weapon, she is relatively weak, still the enemy remains suspicious, finding it impossible that someone so weak could fight like that. The woman charges forward with speed, spinning her weapon and delivering a precise strike. The impact is so strong it explodes against the ground, sending dust and debris into the air, while the wolf tries to react quickly to the attack. The woman spins her weapon swiftly and goes for the attack, creating an explosive impact on the ground. Dust rises as the wolf reacts quickly to the blow. The wolf questions the woman's strength, saying that humans have limits and that this power goes beyond simple training. Annoyed, she cuts him off and states that she trained to her limits, enduring pain, sweat, and tears, even vomiting from the effort to reach that strength. The wolf asks why she decided to become so powerful, and the woman responds that it was because Ariake asked her to become stronger. She explains that Ariake is very strong and always saves her, and that if she became stronger, she could stand by his side without feeling ashamed. Smiling, she admits to training intensely because of him, imagining that, for them to be a couple, they would need to be equals and help each other. She says she wants Ariake to see her as Alicia Lundebrook, the woman, and not just as the Great Saint, a title that bothers her. She claims that her power is proof of her devotion to Ariake, calling it the power of true love. The wolf questions if Ariake even has any interest in her, suggesting that she is more like a disciple to him. Embarrassed, she admits they are still at the beginning of their relationship. The wolf laughs and says that Alicia is the most interesting human he has met in thousands of years trapped there. She is surprised to learn he was sealed, and he confirms, saying the boredom was unbearable. Alicia tries to talk more about Ariake, but he cuts the topic. The wolf reveals that his only desire now is to die to end his suffering, thanking her for the chance to fight. Alicia comments that taking his life would be like assisted suicide, and that Ariake would certainly not approve. She then proposes a deal. If she wins, he must grant her one wish. The wolf, revealing himself as Fenrir of the Ten Saints, accepts the deal and promises to keep his word. Alicia thanks him and states that she will use all her strength to defeat him. Fenrir says that is his hope, as he charges straight at her, beginning the battle with intensity. Alicia, panting and wounded, declares her victory over Fenrir, who is also exhausted and lying down after the intense fight. Fenrir, recognizing his defeat, offers Alicia any reward she desires, mentioning options such as the legendary sword Balme or the elixir of eternal youth. Alicia, still catching her breath, prepares to reveal her request. Alicia surprises Fenrir by revealing her wish that he become her familiar. She argues that together they would be a powerful duo, and that after thousands of years of boredom, it might be something interesting for him. Fenrir, shocked, reacts in disbelief at the unexpected request. Alicia asks Fenrir to come with her, but he refuses, explaining that it is impossible. He reveals that he was cursed to never leave the dungeon alive, and even if he had the honor of being her familiar, as long as he is sealed there, he couldn't help her in the outside world. Fenrir apologizes to Alicia, thanking her for the beautiful dream she gave him, even if brief. However, Alicia with an idea suggests that he simply enter a spiritual form and go into her inventory, since he said he couldn't leave the dungeon alive. Alicia explains that if Fenrir's spirit enters her inventory, he will be considered dead, but she can revive him within 3 hours thanks to her revitalization magic skill. Fenrir is surprised, thinking that only a few mages master this spell, and questions whether she can really do something like that. Alicia says that Ariake always praised her healing skills, and that the idea of using the item box this way came from him, combining the idea with her magic. Proudly, she states that it was only possible thanks to this combination. Fenrir, touched by her words, says that it doesn't matter whether he lives or dies, and that regardless of what happens, he is happy to have met a human like her. Fenrir says that if Alicia can really revive him, he would like to meet this Ariake. Alicia assures him that he will live to meet him and promises to make it happen. Then, the wolf introduces himself as Fenrir, one of the 10 saint beasts, and swears to aid Alicia Lunderbrook and Ariake on their journey. Fenrir, exhausted, says she will help Alicia just as she did with the previous heroes. Alicia promises to meet her again soon and arrange a safe place for her resurrection. Before falling asleep, Fenrir reveals that Alicia misunderstood something. In truth, she is female, and if she can return to the outside world, she will be able to take on a human form. Alicia is surprised to discover that Fenrir is female and can transform into a human, fearing she might be a very attractive woman. While Fenrir sleeps, Alicia wonders whether she should really introduce her to Ariake, but also feels determined to prove she wasn't wrong in wanting her as her familiar. Resolute, Alicia announces that she will leave the group, surprising her companions, who react shocked at the sudden decision. Alicia explains that after the incident and her injuries from the battle against Fenrir, she can no longer fight, using this as an excuse to leave the group. Deep down, she celebrates the perfect opportunity to follow her own plans. While Alicia talks with one of the companions about her absence in the next mission, another group member receives a letter from the kingdom, informing them that the council has decided Vivia Harunoa must be punished. The council decides that Vivia must hand over the holy sword Langris, but before that, she will need to complete a rank D mission. Alicia states that a holy weapon should not remain in the hands of someone who abandons their companions, while another member comments that he should consider himself lucky to receive such a light punishment. Langris accuses Vivia of leaving Alicia to fight alone, telling her to stop acting like the victim. While another member tries to intervene, the conversation quickly shifts to the need to recruit a new member, as they believe the lack of a skilled porter was the cause of their problems, and they mention a man named Basta as a possible candidate. Langris says they will make up for their mistakes in the next mission, stating that a rank D request will be easy and quick, even making the council apologize. He comments that the new recruit will just have to replace the old versatile member. Before leaving, he reminds Alicia that he will keep her spot open. Vivia says goodbye with a smile, wishing them well, while Langris tells her to come find him when she gets better. Soon after, she slams the door shut and, walking through the forest, begins to laugh to herself in satisfaction. Radiant, Vivia celebrates that she will finally be able to return to Ariaki's side. As she walks through the forest, she holds a handmade doll of him and declares that she will stay by his side forever. Shortly after Alicia's departure, Ariaki saved the city of Medicine, unaware of the punishment applied to the hero's party. Now he enters the Forest of Abundance, home of the elves, admiring its vastness and beauty as he looks around with curiosity. While Ariaki travels by carriage through the Forest of Abundance, he is surprised by a group of armed elven archers blocking the path. Not understanding the reason for such a hostile reception, he wonders what kind of welcome this is. As a new challenge begins, Ariaki continues his journey when the elves appear before him. With seriousness, they state that Chief Hayes has matters to discuss directly with him. Determined, they demand that Ariaki accompany them without resistance, making it clear that this was not a simple request but an order. The elves prepare with their bows drawn, warning that they would not guarantee Ariaki's safety if he resisted. He realizes he was not being treated as a guest and questions what would happen if he refused. The elf leader coldly replies that they would take him by force, and soon arrows begin flying toward the carriage. Ariaki's companion reacts immediately, unleashing a dark power that neutralizes the elves' bows and arrows. The enemies are terrified as they see their weapons being destroyed. With a threatening look, she says she needs to burn them even more, and praises their courage for attacking her husband. Ariaki, however, asks to end the situation right there. Ariaki tries to stay calm, asking for an explanation before any confrontation, and even apologizes for the weapons burned by his companion. However, the elves call him a walking disaster, and decide to attack him by force. He activates his physical strength ability, surprising the enemies, who are impressed with his superhuman power, and accuse him of wanting to destroy the forest even further. The elves decide to fight with all their might, claiming it was necessary to protect the forest. They charge at Ariaki, but he stands firm, carrying his companion on his back without showing concern, ready to face any resistance. The elves unleash their most powerful technique, the Barrier of the King of Winds, surrounding Ariaki and his companion in violent whirlwind. They warn that any contact would mean being torn apart, and demand that Ariaki kneel and surrender immediately, trying to force him through intimidation. Ariaki's companion suggests destroying the barrier with her flames, but he stops her, reminding her that it would cause great damage to the forest and the elves themselves. He realizes their aggressiveness comes from desperation, and concludes that they need to prove they have no ill intentions. Looking closer, he notices the elves show strange signs, with reddish eyes and weakened appearances, indicating something was not normal. Ariaki decides to act and, with a single precise movement, tears through the elves' magic barrier as if it were nothing. The impact of his strength shocks everyone, making it clear that his abilities far surpassed what they imagined. The elves are stunned to see Ariaki covered in blood, and believe he recklessly walked toward his own death. Concerned, they ask if he was still alive. However, he calmly stands up, revealing that he had controlled his strength-enhancing ability precisely, only to bleed a little and not cause a massacre, showing how much he mastered his own power. Ariaki reassures the elves, explaining that he used an ability to reinforce his body and that the lost blood was not a real problem. He states that he went this far only to prove he had no bad intentions. Then, staring at the elves firmly, he asks if they still see him as an enemy and a disaster, or if they are finally willing to talk. Amid the tension, a young girl appears in despair, scolding the elves for attacking. She reveals Ariake's identity, calling him the Great Sage, and also recognizes his companion Colette. Determined, she yells that they could not even touch them, completely changing the course of the situation. The girl introduces herself as Sarah, the younger sister of the elven chief, also revealing she is a princess. Before Ariake and Colette, she deeply apologizes for her companion's hostile attitude, explaining that they acted blinded by ancient traditions and their love for the forest. Begging for mercy, she pleads that they forgive the elves, trying to restore peace to the situation. While Sarah bows in apology, some elves revolt, thinking it shameful to bow to a human. Ariake says he does not care, but Sarah insists, reminding them that he and Colette were the heroes who saved a city from a monster invasion. Even so, some elves sneer, saying they do not believe in fairy tales. However, Ariake confirms that his fame reached them because it was something they personally witnessed, making the truth of his deeds clear. Sarah recalls the moment when she was nearly killed by an orc, and how Ariake heroically saved her, describing him with admiration. This surprises everyone, who realize she behaved very differently when outside the forest, revealing that she often disguised herself as another person during her travels. The elves scold Sarah for leaving the forest alone once again, but she defends Ariake and Colette, reminding everyone that it was they who saved her in the past. Faced with this, the elves recognize their debt and apologize for their earlier hostility, inviting Ariake to come to the village as a sign of gratitude. The elves decide to show courtesy and allow Ariake and his companions to be taken to the village, with Sarah offering to guide them. While some accept the decision with relief, others still show concern, remembering that the so-called walking disaster was now heading toward the heart of the village. Ariake and his companions arrive at the elven village and are impressed by the beauty of the place. As they observe, they notice the large amount of logs piled up in the river, and Sarah explains that they are dried trees carried by the current. She then invites them to go to her house first. At Sarah's house, she prepares a banquet for Ariake and his companions as a form of gratitude. While everyone eats with satisfaction, she asks them to call her simply Sarah, setting aside formalities. Ariake is surprised that the elven princess herself would cook for them, but she insists it was the best way to express her gratitude. During the meal, Ariake takes the opportunity to ask for explanations about why he was being called a walking disaster and what was really happening with the forest. Sarah then reveals that, about a year ago, the trees began to wither one after another, something abnormal for such a fertile and prosperous forest. Sarah shows Ariake and the others a dark aura coming from the depths of the great forest. She explains that, although the area near the village had not yet been affected, the withering of the trees in other parts was severe, to the point that the place seemed always shrouded in darkness. In addition, monsters began to appear alongside this corruption, a result of negative energies that had become visible even to the naked eye. Ariake recognizes it as the effects of magical elements, comparing it to threatening dark clouds. Sarah explains that the weakening of the trees, which also served as a natural barrier, brought chaos to the region and threatened the survival of the elven tribe. She reveals that, after analyzing ancient records, her brother concluded that Ariake's very existence, after being expelled from the hero's party, was seen as a disaster. Intrigued, Ariake questions whether this was connected to some past pact between the hero and the elves. Ariake discovers that, in the past, a pact was made between the hero and the elves to protect the great forest, receiving a sacred blessing. Because of this, even though they were against humans, the elves accepted the presence of the hero and his allies. However, since Ariake was expelled from the group, he came to be seen as someone who lost that protection, considered a bearer of calamity. He concludes that, because of this pact, both the hero and the elves see him as a threat, even though the timeline of events does not make sense. Sarah rejects the idea of Ariake being a walking disaster, stating that he is in fact a hope. With humility, she asks him to save the forest, just as he previously protected the city of medicine. However, before Ariake could respond, someone interrupts, saying that this would not be necessary. The elf chief, Hayes, appears furious and scolds his sister Sarah for bringing Ariake to the village. He calls him a walking disaster and criticizes the fact that she would even ask for his help. With a severe look, he makes it clear that he does not trust Ariake and sees him as a threat. Sarah tries to defend Ariake, saying he is not a walking disaster, and asking her brother to listen to her. However, Hayes abruptly interrupts her, saying it was shameful for her to address him so respectfully and accusing her of degrading herself by following him. Determined, he announces that he will put her in confinement to cool her head, leaving Sarah in tears before his harshness. Ariaki intervenes, breaking the chains that bound Sarah effortlessly. Calmly, he takes responsibility, reminding them that the target of their distrust was him and not the princess. Then, he faces the village chief and suggests they speak directly, proposing dialogue instead of conflict. With a firm gesture, Ariake places himself between Sarah and Hayes, making it clear that he will not allow any more injustices. His serious and confident gaze surprises even the elven chief, who is momentarily left without a reaction in the face of his determination. Hayes demands explanations, furious, but Ariake firmly responds that he only broke Sarah's shackles because she did not deserve to be treated that way. He stares at the elven chief and declares that the real walking disaster is right before him, neither hiding nor fleeing, making it clear he is ready to face the situation directly. Hayes loses patience and grabs Ariake by the neck, hurling him violently to the ground. The impact is so strong that debris and rubble scatter across the area. Sarah and the others watch in shock, unable to believe what just happened. Hayes insults Ariake, calling him a disaster and scum, expelled from the heroes group. However, Ariake stares at him seriously and interrupts, imposing respect with his firm presence. Colette appears engulfed by a dark and intimidating aura, glaring at Hayes with anger and making it clear that she will no longer tolerate attacks against Ariake. Furious, Colette unleashes a crushing pressure against Hayes, declaring she will not forgive him, even for ruining the food Sarah had prepared. The elven chief is shocked, feeling an overwhelming power emanating from her, something far beyond mere fear. Ariake tries to calm her, but realizes her strength could easily halt even the destruction of the forest. Hayes orders Ariake and Colette to be imprisoned immediately and thrown into a cell sealed by elven magic. Guards rush to capture them, but Sarah quickly appears, calling out to Ariake and Colette and pointing to an escape route to get them out of there. Ariake, Colette, and Sarah manage to escape by jumping through a window, running far away. Ariake realizes that the village's security is weaker than he imagined, while Sarah admits that she often sneaks out to adventure outside the forest, explaining her quickness and initiative. As the group flees, a powerful explosion strikes the ground, blocking their path. Sarah urges Ariake and Colette to follow her without stopping, making it clear that there is no time for conversation, only to leave the village as quickly as possible. Sarah tries to help Ariake and Colette escape, but is surprised by her own brother, who is outraged to see her protecting the walking disaster. He states that his intention was to capture Ariake alive, to investigate the cause of the forest's weakening. But now his stance shifts to something even harsher. Sarah's brother activates a powerful wind barrier called the Great Barrier of the Wind King, considered one of the strongest. He declares that he no longer needs to show mercy, and that this technique is so destructive, it is meant more for massacre than defense. Determined, he announces that the barrier will not vanish until Ariake is torn apart, calling him once again the walking disaster. The mighty wind barrier created by Sarah's brother explodes violently, raising debris and unleashing a destructive force. Colette watches the scene in shock, eyes wide, clearly frightened by the devastating power of the attack launched against Ariake. The whirlwind of wind gradually dissipates as some onlookers lament, believing Ariake and Colette were defeated. Sarah's brother comments that, even without displaying much strength, the outcome should resolve the problem of the forest's decay. However, before he could feel satisfied, a firm voice echoes, surprising him, declaring that his conclusion was far too premature. Ariake appears beside his companions, shocking everyone by still being alive. The elf, stunned, does not understand how he survived the devastating attack. Ariake explains that he used his ability called Decoy, which creates a clone to serve as bait. Meanwhile, they used a presence-masking skill to approach from behind unnoticed. In this way, the clone took the fatal blow in his place, allowing him to escape unharmed. Ariake surprises the elf by declaring that he does not intend to resist and will allow himself to be taken, as he desires. He explains that he understands the intent to investigate the cause of the forest's withering, and for that reason, agrees to surrender alive. The elf, still suspicious, comments that in the end Ariake only wishes to survive but decides to accept him anyway. As he is shackled, Ariake remains calm, and his companion asks if he is truly fine with this decision. He replies that perhaps this is the fastest way to resolve matters and have a conversation. The elf explains that the sealed prison was designed so that any magic cast from within would only be reflected, preventing any interference with the outside world. He further demands that Ariake monitor whether the forest's weakening truly stops while he is imprisoned. Ariake calmly responds that he does not mind, and asks the elf, named Hayes, to use his own eyes and ears to confirm the truth, not just rumors. He asks that Hayes reflect on what is happening before him at that moment, without looking away. The elf orders Ariake and the others to be taken, irritated by his words. Then, a massive magical prison appears, suspended in the air, surprising everyone. The girl comments in awe about the power of such a structure, while Ariake observes calmly, recognizing it as something impressive, as expected of elven magic. Ariake and his companions are taken into the magical prison. Despite the situation, he observes the place with interest, commenting on the structure and even showing curiosity about the interior of the cell. The guards lock him in and confirm that the disaster has finally been imprisoned. Meanwhile, he and the others accept that they only need to endure for a little longer inside that place. Inside the prison, Ariake is surprised to see that Sarah was also incarcerated. She explains that it was for trying to help him escape, and that it would be wrong if only she were absolved. Ariake apologizes for involving her in this, but Sarah shows joy, saying she is happy to be able to stay by his side all the time, even in such a difficult situation. Ariake explains that the cell is equipped with magic that nullifies physical attacks and reflects spells cast from inside, making escape nearly impossible. Sarah is surprised and thinks there is no way out, but Ariake reveals that there is still a possibility. By using the skill Reversal, he could convert the reflection effect into absorption, turning the barrier into something useful for them. Inside the cell, Ariake explains that the Reversal skill would indeed work, but the prison was not designed to absorb magic, which would cause the structure to exceed its limits and collapse on its own. Even so, he decides not to escape immediately, and says he intends to remain imprisoned for a while. Shocked, the girls question his choice, but he states that his intention is to let time resolve everything. A week later, the elves are shocked to see the destruction that had occurred. The area was completely devastated, and one of them despairs upon realizing that monsters had devoured everything. During the heavy rain of 2 days earlier, the attack happened without them noticing, leaving the situation even more tragic. The elves panic in the face of the destruction, realizing that capturing Ariake had solved nothing. One of them orders the remains to be eliminated and the area purified, warning that otherwise another cluster of magical energy could emerge. Meanwhile, the leader organizes the guards to reinforce the monster barrier around the forest. Mounted on his horse, he despairs, thinking that a week has passed since the walking disaster was imprisoned, yet there are no signs of improvement, raising the doubt that the cause may be something completely different. A ceremony takes place among the elves, where Hayes is officially recognized as the new leader. Receiving the blessing of the spirits, he promises to make the great forest prosper even more with his own hands. The elves enthusiastically acclaim him, calling him Hayes-sama. In his thoughts, he reflects that he reduced deforestation more than the previous chief, making the forest more prosperous, while also strengthening his people further with the land's natural energy. However, he also realizes that in the 10 years since he became chief, nothing like this had ever happened before, showing his concern with the current crisis. After a year of drought and problems in the forest, the elves begin to doubt Hayes' leadership. They say that letting the forest wither is unthinkable, and that he is not loved by the forest, making him unworthy of being chief. Irritated, Hayes retorts, affirming that he is loved by the forest, and that the cause must come from something external. Determined, he says he must discover what is truly affecting the great forest. At that moment, a subordinate arrives, bringing news about the hero, drawing Hayes' attention to a possible link between the events. Hayes discovers that someone had been expelled from the heroes group. He recalls having heard about a useless member who hindered the team and immediately associates this with Ariake, known as the walking disaster. Hayes remembers having met the heroes group years ago but never meeting Ariake, since he acted independently. Suspicious, he concludes that Ariake may be seeking revenge against the hero, dragging everyone around him into ruin. Ariake appears, reminding them that everyone should decide for themselves, using their own eyes and ears, without diverting attention from the truth. The scene shifts to a young elf girl, emotional, pleading with her brother, saying that Ariake is not a walking disaster. Her words, filled with sincerity, leave her brother shocked and speechless. The elven leader is stunned after hearing the passionate defense of the young girl, unable to respond. The scene abruptly shifts to a demon-like girl, calling Ariake husband and complaining that it had already been a week since the last time. Colette calmly speaks with Sarah, explaining that even with Ariake imprisoned, the forest continues to wither, which proves his innocence. Meanwhile, the demon girl complains about the delay, comparing her own swift imprisonment to the current situation. Sarah, however, defends her brother, saying he is simply strict with everyone but loves the forest above all, treating it more as a daughter than just a simple sister. Sarah shows concern, wishing that the forest would not continue to wither and that no one else would suffer because of it. Meanwhile, Ariake reflects that Hayes must already be realizing the truth. The idea of a walking disaster is nothing more than an invention, and now Hayes himself is being tested by the forest to prove whether he is truly worthy of being the chief of the elves. Ariake remains imprisoned, but states that he is merely waiting for the right moment. Sarah watches him emotionally and thinks to herself that it is as if the true test comes from Ariake himself. To her, he is not just an ordinary man, but someone who seems to have become one with the Great Spirit, descending before them like a divinity. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake violently, surprising everyone inside the prison. Sarah and Colette are startled, not understanding what is happening, while commenting on the strength of the tremor. Ariake, remaining calm, observes the situation and declares that this was something bad, revealing his concern about what was to come. Ariake watches the situation attentively, realizing the seriousness of what is happening. A knight sees the emergency smoke from the village and rushes anxiously to find out what happened. The knight arrives at the village and finds destruction and injured villagers, shocked by the scene before his eyes. The elven chief arrives at the village and discovers that a landslide destroyed several houses. The villagers try to rescue survivors but lack enough people. Amid the chaos, he becomes distressed upon learning that Sarah has still not been found. Desperate villagers cry for help, saying relatives were buried. The ground remains unstable, and there is risk of new landslides. The elven chief feels the weight of the decision between ordering an evacuation or trying to save everyone, while believing that the spirit of the forest is furious. The elven chief blames himself for the disaster, believing he failed as a leader for not having the blessing of the forest spirit. As he drowns in thoughts of guilt, a firm voice arises, ordering him to face reality and think about what is happening around him. The elven chief confronts his guilt, remembering that he is not loved by the forest spirit. Even so, he gathers strength and assumes his position before everyone, firmly declaring that he is the leader of that village. The elven chief decides to act with determination, prioritizing the rescue of the villagers. He orders the children and elderly to be evacuated first, and the soldiers to remove the debris, even in the face of danger. Resolute, he promises not to leave anyone behind and to do everything he can for his village. Exhausted and covered in dust, the elven chief kneels among the ruins, believing that the right path to save his village will be revealed to him. Suddenly, a second wave of landslides strikes the village. The warning echoes for everyone to run, as the elven chief protects a child in his arms amidst the chaos. The elven chief realizes that his magic is not enough to contain the second landslide, and despairs at the number of people in danger. Amid the chaos, he apologizes to everyone, and, in his thoughts, painfully remembers Sarah with regret. At the moment when the elven chief nearly gives up, a figure appears before him, questioning his weakness and demanding why he gave up so quickly in the face of the situation. The mysterious young man activates several abilities at once, manipulating powerful forces. To everyone's surprise, the landslide begins to reverse, and the elven chief, shocked, declares it a true miracle before his eyes. The villagers celebrate emotionally for being alive and reuniting with their families. The elven chief, impressed by the power used to reverse the disaster, wonders who that young man really is. At that moment, a voice calls him older brother. Sarah appears unharmed, relieving everyone. The elven chief embraces her emotionally, grateful for her safety. Even with so many questions in the air, they decide to leave the explanations for later and focus on clearing the landslide debris. Sarah and her companion complain for having been left behind, but quickly explain that they arrived late because she had to be carried. The mysterious young man says he only protected himself from the landslide, but the elven chief recognizes that, in truth, he was the one who saved the entire elven village. The elven chief states that, for now, the priority is rescuing the villagers buried under the debris, leaving gratitude for later. Sarah calls the young man older brother, while he teases the elves, saying that with their weakened magic it would take days to clear the landslide. The young man activates a muscle enhancement spell and casts it on everyone present, allowing the elves to lift heavy stones with ease. He explains that he is in a hurry, so they need to speed up the debris removal. Later, the elves hold a celebration in gratitude, They raise a toast to Ariake, acknowledging that his strength and abilities saved the village. Thanks to him, everyone was rescued and, this time, no lives were lost. During the celebration, Ariake tries to slip away discreetly so as not to draw attention, but is interrupted by the elves' sincere thanks. The chief insists that he stay, as his absence would only arouse more suspicion. Ariake, however, prefers to remain in the corner, reflecting ironically on the situation. The elven chief calls Ariake before everyone, gathering courage to speak his feelings. With tears in his eyes, he admits that, despite all the rudeness and distrust he showed before, he must say this no matter what. The elven chief tries to apologize but hesitates before everyone. Colette teases him, excited at the possibility of seeing him admit his mistake. Pressured, he almost manages to say it, but Ariake interrupts, stating that he doesn't need to force himself, since apologizing to a human is something very difficult for elves. The elven chief finally kneels and, aloud, apologizes, admitting his mistakes. He acknowledges that his arrogance and distrust put everyone in danger and made him a failure as a leader. In tears, he admits that he even doubted his own sister and himself. Ariake, however, interrupts, saying that he is wrong. Ariake explains that the true cause of the disaster was the accumulation of magical elements in the forest. This happened because the elves stopped performing the management of the trees, something they regularly did in the past. He points out that the excess of untrimmed vegetation had caught his attention since he arrived, showing that the problem was a consequence of this neglect. Ariake concludes that the accumulation of magical elements was worsened by the lack of tree management, which blocked sunlight and intensified the problem. Combined with the recent heavy rain, this caused the landslide. He criticizes the elven chief for having stopped the pruning process, asking the reason. Ashamed, the chief reveals that he only followed the advice of someone who convinced him to stop years ago. The elven chief reveals that the one who convinced him to stop managing the forest was the hero Bibia. At the time, there were already signs of accumulation of magical elements, and not knowing how to act, he followed the hero's advice, who said that the elves should abandon this old custom because they depended on the energy of the trees. The elven chief admits that he had doubts, but trusted the hero's words and interrupted the forest management. At first, it even seemed like a good choice, since the magical elements decreased and the people gained more power. But this only masked the real problem. He recognizes his immaturity and guilt for not having realized the cause. Meanwhile, Ariake gets angry, calling Bibia incompetent and lamenting not having been there to prevent all of this from happening. The elven chief takes full responsibility for the disaster and sincerely apologizes. He acknowledges his mistakes and even apologizes on behalf of those who had already expelled Ariake from the group. Surprised, Ariake questions why he would do that, remembering that he believed apologizing was only for those who had lost their pride. The elven chief thanks Ariake and promises to resume the management of the forest, purifying the magical elements as instructed. He acknowledges that the apology was not a sign of weakness, but rather of pride and nobility. The scene ends with hope, showing that both the forest and he himself are ready to change. Sarah begs Ariake to stay longer in the village, even saying she will create a fan club for him, while Colette supports the idea in a playful tone. The elven chief, more serious, states that after controlling the situation he will report to the kingdom the irresponsibility of the current hero, demanding that he receive a warning for his lack of awareness. As everyone talks, the elven chief also promises to report Ariake's heroic deeds to the kingdom. Sarah, emotional, tries to gather the courage to speak about her feelings for him, but ends up being interrupted before she can confess. Ariake praises Sarah for her courage, saying it was thanks to her that they were able to endure through difficulties. He states that this leadership power will make her a great elven princess capable of guiding her people. Emotional and with tears in her eyes, Sarah listens as he promises to meet her again in the future. At the farewell, Ariake wishes Sarah to take care of herself. Emotional and smiling through tears, she responds by asking him to take care as well. The scene ends with a warm goodbye, marked by gratitude and the hope of reunion. In the city of Laxmi, a new recruitment notice appears for the hero's party. A young woman, excited, sees in this the chance to finally be useful to the hero and his companions, dreaming of joining the team. A young woman travels alone, enjoying her freedom and humming happily along the way. Despite liking the solitary journey, she admits to herself that everything would be much better if she had someone special by her side. The young woman continues her journey accompanied by her wolf familiar, Fenrir. He scolds her for saying she travels alone since he is always by her side. Using her skill, She confirms she has detected something strange in the surroundings, a powerful presence reminiscent of a non-human creature, perhaps a dragon. Even so, with confidence, she orders Fenrir to move forward, showing courage in commanding such a feared beast. In an interview room, the hero's party discusses in frustration. The leader complains that no one showed up to join the team, despite renting the space. A companion comments that, the day before, at least there was some interest, but all the candidates were weak. Annoyed, he says they urgently need a healer to replace Alicia, since the Imperials forced him to accept a low-rank mission just to recover his sword. The hero's party continues arguing about the lack of recruits. The leader complains that the newly admitted novice is useless and was only accepted to carry loads. The arguments intensify, with accusations about who is to blame for the lack of members. Amid the confusion, the novice, named Basta, appears saying that he has already organized all the group's luggage. Even though he is treated only as a porter, he receives a dry compliment from the leader for the work done. Basta begins to doubt whether he should have even joined the group, since they said they did not need men. However, some members affirm that he is useful and would be missed without him. Meanwhile, the leader tells him not to worry and just do his job properly, saying that would already be better than the last porter. At the same time, someone asks about Pulala, noting that she has been acting very independently, while Basta remains uncomfortable being treated only as a helper. Pulala appears accompanied by some people and is immediately questioned about where she had been. The men try to flirt with her, but she rebuffs them angrily. The companions think she brought candidates for the group, praising her. At that moment, attention turns to Vivia, who introduces himself as the great hero, leaving the newcomers impressed to be before someone so famous. The newcomers begin provoking Vivia, reminding him that he lost the sacred sword and even abandoned the group in the cursed lair. Irritated, he tries to react violently, but is restrained by a companion who prevents him from attacking civilians. Amid the commotion, Vivia still stresses that compared to them, Ariake is infinitely better. The adventurers discuss Ariake. Some reveal that during the battle in the City of Medicine, he led only 100 adventurers and defeated 1,000 monsters, even an ogre king, when everyone else had already given up. While some confirm they fought alongside him, others refuse to believe it, calling it all lies. Vivia, furious, expels the visitors with shouts, but they leave praising Ariake, calling him a true hero. This leaves Vivia trembling with rage, while the others begin to consider that perhaps they should apologize to Ariake for having treated him badly. Pulala states that Ariake possessed a unique skill called God of Buffs, and suggests that the failure in the lair happened precisely because he was not present. This surprises the group, but Vivia reacts furiously, grabbing her and saying he would never stoop to apologizing to Ariake. Vivia, enraged, assaults Pulala upon hearing her speak about Ariake, saying that if she wanted to apologize, she should go alone. Despite this, Pulala assures that she will not abandon the group. Ariake helps her up and asks if she is all right, while she admits to feeling relieved to still have friends by her side. Pulala, determined, promises that one day Vivia will get what he deserves. Meanwhile, Vivia loses his patience once again, believing that the villagers are speaking about him, and starts another commotion, determined to teach a lesson to anyone who disrespects him. Suddenly, a cheerful young woman appears before Vivia, calling out to him with enthusiasm and saying it has been a long time since they last saw each other. Surprised, he recognizes the girl as Lorelei, who confirms with a smile. Lorelei warmly introduces herself to everyone, saying she has just returned from a long mission and came to greet them upon hearing they were there. She happily reunites with her former companions, and upon noticing Basta, greets him cheerfully. The young man shyly introduces himself as a porter, and Lorelei explains that she was once a temporary member of the hero's party, also revealing her full name, Lorelei Cornelia, a cleric. Lorelei asks about Ariake and the Great Saint, but soon learns they are no longer part of the group. She recalls her time as a temporary member when she accompanied Lord Vivia on an epic mission to defeat a behemoth. Excited, she recounts how she was chosen by chance to be the healer for that journey. While the others comment on the absence of members, Vivia confidently declares that with him around, it doesn't matter how many are on the team. Lorelei, thrilled, praises Vivia's legendary feat of defeating the behemoth with a single strike of the sacred sword, saying she still remembers it every night. Lorelei begins praising the group, recalling how Delia defeated enemies with her fists, Pulala impressed with magic, and Elga easily held back the monsters. Vivia, full of himself, takes advantage of the compliments to boast, laughing and agreeing enthusiastically. The atmosphere becomes lighthearted, But then Lorelei reveals she did not come just to greet them. She mentions hearing that the group is recruiting healers and suggests that her presence has a greater purpose. Lorelei offers to join the group as a healer, and before she can even finish, Vivia immediately accepts, shouting that she is hired. Everyone is surprised, but Vivia insists that among all the options, she was perfect for the position. Lorelei is moved, calling it a great honor, while Vivia boasts that this is how a hero should be treated. Radiant, she declares she is happy to be at Vivia's side once again. The group talks about how far they have come on their journey and recalls old times. Pulala comments that she would like to return to those days, and Vivia assures them that after completing the mission and recovering his sword, everything will return to normal. Full of confidence, they get excited and decide to set out together for the next adventure. The group arrives at the Edcock Forest, where their mission is to defeat the wyverns that have settled at the local lake. While Vivia explains the importance of subjugating these creatures to keep the area safe for adventurers, some members complain about the heat, the insects, and the discomfort of traveling through the forest, making their unease clear. The group continues through the forest, while Vivia complains and urges them to hurry the mission. Lorelei comments that even with repellent, small insects still bother her, but she remains cheerful, recalling the shine of Vivia's sacred sword. Suddenly, he asks everyone to stop, claiming to be alert for danger, though he finds nothing immediately, leaving the companions curious about what he had really noticed. A powerful roar echoes through the forest, and a manticore appears before the group, surprising everyone. Lorelei is frightened, but Vivia remains confident, saying that a rank C monster is nothing to him. Arrogantly, he attacks the creature, trying to display his strength worthy of a rank S hero. The battle becomes complicated when the manticore counterattacks with its poisonous stinger. Lorelei warns that it is venomous, but Vivia is grazed. He tries to play it off, saying it was just a scratch, but the poison begins to worry them, while the group questions why the creature did not fall from just one strike. As the fight grows more intense, Delia prepares to deliver the final blow to the manticore, but the creature moves too quickly, dodging the attack. Elga tries to hold the defense but ends up being struck, showing the group's difficulty in handling the monster's speed and strength. The manticore charges at the group, while the members argue and disorganize themselves, making the fight harder. Pulala, irritated with the lack of cooperation, orders everyone to step aside and casts a powerful spell. Her attack explodes against the creature, freezing and trapping it in a brittle layer of ice. Lorelei strikes the manticore with a powerful fireball, but the creature resists and roars furiously. While the monster continues burning and struggling, the hero, still poisoned, complains that the attack was useless and demands that Lorelei cure him of the poison immediately. After the battle, Lorelei confronts the group and points out the inconsistency. She reminds them that Vivia is a rank S adventurer who once defeated even a behemoth, yet they all struggled against a single rank C manticore. The uncomfortable truth that had been ignored becomes clear. Something is wrong with the hero's abilities and his team. Lorelei questions the group, pointing out that they had a great deal of trouble against only a low-level manticore. Vivia tries to justify it, saying it was just a bad day and they were a little out of rhythm, as well as it being the first mission with the new team formation. Still, doubt about their real strength begins to grow. Vivia tries to excuse the defeat by saying the group was not yet in sync, but now they were fine. The other members, though hesitant, agree with him. However, Ariake watches the situation with suspicion. Trying to escape, Vivia claims to have a stomachache and begins to walk away, but Lorelei confronts him directly, asking where he thinks he is going. Vivia begins to resist, saying he did not want to go in front. The others accuse him of trying to flee the fight, calling him a coward. Desperate, he shouts that he knew they would use him as bait again and tries to escape, but the group insists on keeping him with them. Lorelei, not understanding, asks what he meant by bait, leaving the others embarrassed and trying to cover it up. Lorelei believes their excuse and says that if the heroes group claims it is nothing, then it must be true. Meanwhile, the others grow irritated at her naivety, wondering how someone like that became an adventurer. In the end, they push Vivia to the front, forcing him to lead the way against his will. During the exploration, the group realizes they have run out of insect repellent, which attracts black mosquitoes that drain the adventurer's MP and leave painful marks. Annoyed, Vivia demands more repellent, only to discover that none is left, putting everyone in an even more uncomfortable situation. The group begins arguing about the lack of repellent. The new member tries to justify himself, saying he followed orders not to bring too many items, but the others blame him, remembering that even Ariake, when he was with them, never ran out of supplies. Surprised, he asks if that was really true. The members are impressed to hear that Ariake never lets supplies run out, something considered nearly impossible for any adventurer. Lorelei comments that she also never heard of anyone like that, since preparation between leader and porter is essential for the success of a mission. Lorelei explains that behind every good porter, there is always a competent leader, since it is the leader who decides the right items according to the mission and the group's strength. She recalls that Ariake never let anything be missing, so she questions why this time he failed. Embarrassed, he tries to cover it up, saying that unforeseen events happen and that it is part of adventuring. Lorelei says she is relieved, since she thought there was a serious reason for the difficulties, but if it was just insects, it was not so bad. Ariake tries to brush it off, saying they were just a small nuisance. Still, the blonde stares at him silently, making him nervous, until she apologizes and comments that there is still something to consider. While beginning to search through her bag, Lorelei hands out some extra repellents she had brought with her, leaving the group relieved and cheerful. Everyone thanks her for the help, saying she truly saved them. One of the members even promises to try harder from now on. Meanwhile, Ariake grows frustrated, realizing that no one paid attention to what he had just said. The group continues arguing about who should go in front until Ariake relents and allows the others to use the items. However, in the middle of their march, they come across a massive dragon blocking the path, putting everyone on alert before the new threat. The group spots the dragon ahead, but while Ariake suggests forming a strategy before acting, the others ignore him and charge forward without thinking. Each gets excited, wanting to use their skills first, treating the battle as something simple. Ariake realizes they had already decided to act without planning, leaving him uneasy about the outcome. Lorelei interrupts the group's advance, declaring that she does not agree with the rushed strategy. She reminds them of the basic rule of adventuring: always expect the unexpected. Her words surprise the group, showing that caution is essential before facing the dragon. Lorelei points out that the group only discussed the basic order of attack, but ignored factors such as terrain, weather, resistance, and unforeseen events. She warns of the possibility of more wyverns being hidden, or the monster calling for reinforcements. She then questions why, this time, the hero chose to act without a strategy. Confident, he only replies that as the hero, he could handle any surprise on his own. During the discussion, Lorelei states that on the previous mission, the group had devised an elaborate strategy, though the others seem not to remember. She then firmly declares that there is another essential rule for adventurers: only with a proper strategy can the full potential of the group be reached. Determined, she asks if everyone understood her message. Lorelei explains that a mission cannot be completed with individual strength alone, but rather through a strategy that uses each person's strengths in attack, defense, and support, ensuring the best result. One of the members questions if she considers strategy more important than strength, and the hero feels provoked. She denies belittling him, saying it is simply common sense, but stresses that it is strange for him to act so recklessly now, since it was precisely his intelligent strategy that made the group praised until then. The hero is surprised to hear that people praised his strategies, as he had never paid attention to that. Lorelei recalls the battle against the behemoth, where everyone recognized his way of acting. She explains that behemoths are initially weak to cold, but when cornered, they change their form, becoming more resistant and turning into even more dangerous opponents. In that fight, he managed to quickly identify the creature's new weakness with his keen observation and precise analysis, using the proper support spell without hesitation, which was the key to victory. After the fight against the behemoth, the heroes group gained fame as great strategists, which even attracted new members. Many heard how they won in just a few hours and praised the tactics used, considering them worthy of admiration. While some recognized the feat, the hero grew confused and irritated, claiming there had been no strategy at all, since the group only wanted to fight and left all the support to Lorelei. During the battle, Ariake notices that the water attacks suddenly stop working, surprising him. While he tries to understand the situation, the hero orders him to quickly switch spells. Another spell ends up protecting the group, but the credit is given to another companion, Alicia, who is scolded for showing off by using defensive magic, even though she had saved the moment. During the fight, an ally confirms that Ariake had correctly predicted the enemy's random attacks. Alicia casts the necessary defense at the right time, earning praise. She then predicts the next moves. In seconds, Delia and Lorelei would be attacked, and soon after Elga would suffer a status effect. As the group continues fighting, the hero feels pressured, but Ariake, serious, begins to act. The hero, filled with rage, shouts that he was the one who fought and that Ariake had no victories to his name, calling him useless. However, a companion interrupts, reminding him that Ariake was the one who took care of all the preparations alone, explained the strategy, and even guided the group throughout the entire battle. A companion reflects that Ariake is no longer there, and his departure left behind an uncomfortable truth. The group had become a shadow of what it once was. The hero, in desperation, wonders if Ariake's absence is the reason the team has become so pathetic and disorganized.